That's one grouping. We're going to open up and show you another grouping. You know, everything has been peaceful so far. There's been a couple lines set up by the LAPD. It's right on the left side of your screen there. And the crowd, for the most part, have observed the area that the LAPD forced the crowd into and did not force themselves towards the Kodak Theater and that stretch of Hollywood Boulevard that they were trying to protect with the National Guard. And everything has been peaceful, so that is good. We see more resources coming into the area, though. You don't see it in this shot, but on the Hollywood Freeway, I see a dozen or so LAPD units coming into Hollywood. Right now, it's getting to the size of a crowd that it can be very difficult to control. Now, we have a feeling they might continue, these two crowds. Come back to the other one, if you would. Eastbound and head towards the LAPD headquarters. We got some notice that that might be the case, and that's on Wilcox, just south of Sunset. But you can tell from these shots, Philip, it's a large crowd. And, you know, we did a hit, I don't know, right at the top, the end of the show at 12, and it was maybe a quarter of this size. So a lot of people got the word. It was rapper YG, I understand, who Instagrammed out to meet here Tuesday at noon, and no looting allowed. We haven't seen any looting, but we certainly see a lot of people flowing in.
Well, I'm just getting word that rapper YG has said he will not be there now. So he got inspired to get people together, and then he is not going to be there. But Scott, one of the questions I have as I watch these two significant rallies that are fairly large in size, but as you mentioned, very peaceful, does it look like they're going to stay apart? Is there a way, as they head in the same direction eastbound there, that at some point they will merge, or does it look as if they will continue paths separately?
You know, it's hard to say for sure. We had the crowd that was, for the most part, all together headed westbound, and then the LAPD came in and made a skirmish line and stopped one group. They sort of split the two groups up. I don't know if that was done purposely or if they just really didn't want them to head in a certain area, and it just sort of happened out of circumstance. I believe, or we believe, the two crowds are trying to get back together to become one, and as I mentioned, there's some information they may head towards the LAPD Hollywood Station headquarters, which is on Wilcox, just south of Sunset. So it's becoming an extremely large crowd, not like what we saw on Saturday at the Pan Pacific Park. That was massive, but we are seeing thousands of people in two large groups. And like I mentioned, Philip, you know, we're seeing them just executing their constitutional rights, protesting, marching. They took a knee for a moment. They've been talking to the police officers, not really engaging them. It's been peaceful so far, and this is what you would expect, and this is what you would hope for all the way into the afternoon. And, you know, rapper YG not making it, one thing he did tweet out, I understand, or was on Instagram, no looting allowed, and hopefully everyone will abide by that.
Well, one of the things I'm noticing with these two groups, Scott, is, you know, even before we went on the air and just watching your shot, it seems as if they're all staying together. The big concern that, you know, for those who might cause ne'er-do-wells, so to speak, are those that dive off of the main group and they take off. Everybody's been very orderly, staying right in there together. I mean, are you seeing the same type of thing?
Yeah, absolutely. And, you know, from experience of watching these things, usually when the marchers are allowed to march and they continue on in a certain direction and the police don't really interfere with them, we don't see those splinter groups break out, at least not early on in the marches. On Saturday, when we had that problem in the Fairfax district, you know, LAPD got a call, an urgent call, right at the corner of 3rd and Fairfax, and they had to respond. And that seemed to incite the crowd because they wanted to move, and LAPD didn't let them. It was a tough situation, I think, for everyone involved. Today we don't see that, though, for the most part, except for that one stand that LAPD made with the National Guard, and that was you're not going to go to the Kodak Theater. They weren't going to let them down that iconic stretch of Hollywood Boulevard. They forced them to turn around and come back eastbound. But, yeah, Philip, we haven't really seen any splinter groups go off and cause problems. And when the LAPD did actually form a line, we didn't see any aggressive action towards the police. We didn't see anything thrown. We didn't see individuals getting too close. You know, they try and keep a barrier. So far it's been very peaceful, and hopefully that's what we'll see throughout the afternoon. But I do believe the two crowds will come together. You can push into the intersection for me, Jamie, where they made the turn. It'd be in the bottom of our screen. If that's
it did look like they were starting to turn.
Yeah, they turned south. And if that's Wilcox there, if we can push in on the street sign, if they take that further south, it's not Wilcox, but it's going to put them close They go south here, they're going to hit Sunset. And the other group is coming eastbound on Sunset. So it looks like they're going to merge. It looks like there's some sort of coordination happening with the two groups down here, that they're going to get together. And when they do, that's going to be a huge crowd. It will be several thousand at least.
Well, one of the things I think that is lost just from above and here in studio looking there is there's really an effort by people, at least yesterday, and I'm certain the same today, there's an effort by the people involved to self-police. You could hear them talking to each other saying, don't do this, don't do that. They went so far yesterday as providing water to people who were participating. So there was a very coordinated effort to try, and they worked very well with LAPD in many circumstances yesterday, getting their opportunity to protest another 45 minutes. And so I totally believe what you're saying there, Scott, is that there might be a coordinated effort here on the part of LAPD and the protesters to try to let them gather together and do exactly what you're saying. Avoid that confrontation that can spark, who knows, because there is a lot of anger involved in why people have chosen to come out and do this peaceful protest. And you don't want that bubbling to the surface. You'd rather let them do exactly what they're doing, which is, like you said, the constitutional right to gather, to protest, to have their voices heard. And it's been interesting to watch all of the participants really try to keep those involved on track. You know, this is what our mission is, and it's been very impressive to watch, especially here in LA, how many people have been trying to do that.
Yeah, and so far, you know, you're exactly right about what sort of transpires, at least what we've seen from the helicopter. If the crowd is allowed to go where they want, and the LAPD or the authorities have a very small footprint, that certainly helps things not get to that boiling point, to not spill over and become violent. And that's what we're seeing here in Hollywood right now. No one seems to be intent on doing anything other than marching. But I want to tilt up with your camera and just give folks some perspective. I mean, the LAPD has to be ready just in case. I don't think they want to engage at all unless they have to. But as we continue up out of the shot, you will see just how many officers are ready to engage if this becomes a situation where people decide to break off and to start looting. Now, the only place I saw the National Guard was basically just a little bit west of Highland on Hollywood Boulevard. And if you go there, you know, that's that iconic stretch where all the tourists come there in front of the Kodak Theater. And they just decided, hey, the crowd's not going to go there. And the crowd today was fine with that. There was really no aggressive motions towards the police because they had to turn around. And that's a really good sign. So we'll have to follow along and see where they're headed. We don't have any information on that. And from following these things from time to time, I'm not sure the crowd in and of itself knows. You have different individuals who seem to be leading the crowd from time to time. But the two crowds could very well merge. I'm looking out my window trying to find the crowd that was on Sunset. And I think they're hidden behind a couple of buildings, or they were diverted south to another intersection. We'll try and catch up with them. But peaceful so far, what you would expect to see, and then again, we hope it stays that way.
And it's not always that easy to know what is being told to everyone. Communicating with thousands of people across that kind of mileage is difficult. You're getting a lot of word of mouth. I'm telling this person, they're telling another person. Police do talk to the organizers and the organizers to police, but then trying to get that word to that many people is sometimes difficult. Scott, we're going to hold your picture here, and if you'll just stand by for a second, we also wanted to show what's going on at Northridge. This is in Northridge at Cal State University Northridge. You see that there is a protest there. Streets have not been blocked. You can see a couple of vehicles there trying to make through that intersection, but there are protesters who are in the crosswalk. You do have police there in the intersection, probably in an attempt to keep people as much as they can out of the street. And in many cases, the protesters themselves will remind people, stay on the sidewalk, stay out of the street. That is for their own safety, but also to just maintain good relations as well, because they want to be able to sit there. It looks like, if we can get News Chopper to zoom in a little bit, maybe more, it looks as if it's almost a sit-in, as if people are sitting down. In many cases, I see some on their knees. There are people holding signs there. So clearly you have another peaceful protest. That is at Cal State University Northridge. And we're going to continue to monitor that one. But go back to Scott Reif. And Scott, you mentioned something a moment ago with the National Guard troops. located at iconic areas. And it seems as if that has been a tactic over the last few days where a lot of resources are mustered in areas that they have said, this is something we're going to protect. Yesterday, municipal court buildings, there were a lot of officers surrounding that building. You are not getting anywhere near that. And then you mentioned today, they're staging in areas that are not affecting the protesters, but they are there if needed.
Yeah, absolutely. They don't want the National Guard to engage the protesters. I mean, that's a really tricky situation. I don't think they have the training that the LAPD does and that law enforcement does for the most part to really engage the crowd and to allow these things to happen. So they just set them up in areas where they can actually say, this is our stand. They put them behind the LAPD officers. Now, it's going to be a little tricky for us here because I found the other crowd. You've got a large portion on Sunset coming towards us. They're traveling westbound. The other group went further south, down towards Melrose. But you'll see as we move the camera around, as I'm going to make Jamie go crazy here, it's behind us off to our right, actually on Santa Monica Boulevard. Jamie, if you just keep coming down with the camera and come down a little bit further and then keep going until you hit Santa Monica Boulevard, keep on a little bit further. Then we'll find the other group here in just a moment. And I believe there's the tail end. They went south, and then they turned right on Santa Monica Boulevard. So they're sort of heading in the same direction. Maybe there's a little coordination going on. But, you know, we're in this several thousand range now. Come towards us to the front of the marchers there, Jamie. And, boy, you know, this is Santa Monica Boulevard and headed away from Highland. And if you are thinking about coming down for the march, then, you know, come on down. But if you're thinking about just driving through Hollywood to get somewhere, there are going to be a lot of streets that will be shut down, a lot of traffic implications on these surface streets. And the LAPD is doing the best they can to try and divert traffic away from the marchers. Because, you know, the last thing you want is traffic coming into the direction that the marchers are headed. That can cause some really big problems. So they're doing the best they can. But, you know, it doesn't really appear, Philip, to be coordinated as far as where these two groups are headed. It did for a moment there, but now they're headed in the same direction about a mile apart from each other.
Wow, a mile apart, but they've traveled a long way already. One thing I've noticed, Scott, too, is looking at some of the cars. In many cases, the cars are showing support for the protesters,
Absolutely.
honking the horns. I have not seen many cars get very angry or upset at needing to make a turn here or there. So, you know, you mentioned if you're traveling in that area to avoid that, and that is for sure. But some people have kind of driven into these areas and really honked the horn, maybe provide water. They're doing what they can. Right here, you've got a car going with the protesters.
Absolutely. They just want to come out and protest, and they're doing it in the car, and that might be a little easier in some sense than getting out and walking. But you'll see what happens. Jamie, just come towards us and tilt down real quick. All traffic on Santa Monica Boulevard eastbound, they're seeing the marchers ahead of them, and they're turning around for the most part. We had several turning around at the intersection a moment ago. Then they just sort of went through. You'll see a couple cars saying, hey, we're not going to continue that direction. So it can be a little tough if you're just traveling through this area. But you're right, for the most part, everyone is being encouraging. A lot of drivers coming through this area are supporting everyone who is out marching.
Well, it is going to be interesting, though, as we approach the 1 o'clock hour. It's hard to gauge how many people there are because the protest line is so long. And in many cases, some people are walking on the sidewalk, some people are in the street. But once everyone gets together, and if they do find a way to close that mile gap that's between the two, you know, you still have a curfew that's going to be in place later today, and that's going to be difficult to disperse that many people once they all get together.
It's going to be tough. Let me just try and show you everything here. So it's in the thousands for sure. Open up out of your shot a little bit, Jamie, and tilt up. And that'll give you the extent of this line, just how long the line of marchers is coming onto Santa Monica Boulevard. And now I want to just keep tilting up and then pan to your left. And we're going to go back up to Hollywood Boulevard. It's on the top of your screen, the top left, Jamie. Now just keep tilting up top of your middle portion of your screen, right up in there. And there's the other group. And so you really get a sense of how many people have turned out today. It is a lot. It is in the thousands. I mean, I started to count earlier when people just got there and sort of got an idea what 100 looks like at a certain focal length on the helicopter. So that's it. You're able to sort of just estimate things from there. And it's in the thousands. I don't know that it's 10,000, but it's more than 1,000 people, that's for certain. And you can tell we're shooting this shot from a long distance, open up a little bit. That's a little pushed and compressed, but you know, that is a lot of people right there, and that's the larger grouping. And then what we showed you, that's Hollywood Boulevard, they're coming west. Then the smaller grouping, which is a large group as well, that was on Santa Monica Boulevard coming west, and they're probably about half a mile away from each other, I would say.
Well, I actually had mine confused. I thought the one that we were showing that was on Santa Monica Boulevard was the larger one, and you can see them both growing. They're growing moment quickly to moment that we're going through. Are you seeing any kind of change in where police are located? I mean, they have a tendency to move very quickly. So if the protest goes through an area, are you seeing that staging area of police that we saw a moment ago? Have they moved as well, but still maintaining a distance?
Well, I haven't seen much of that, Philip. You know, this group on Santa Monica Boulevard, I think, splintered off. I want to go back north, and then I'm going to show you the bigger crowd, the larger crowd. Just open up for a second and show them there, Jamie, that entire stretch. And as we move further north, what we're going to see here in a moment is the larger group of people that are marching westbound on Hollywood Boulevard. As they get closer to Highland, they're going to meet that skirmish line. They're going to meet that line that the LAPD has said, hey, we're holding it here. And so as far as the movement of the LAPD, they seem to allow this crowd to go wherever they want to, except for to continue all the way down Hollywood Boulevard. But open up out of this shot. So this is the westbound group, Philip, on Hollywood Boulevard. And, you know, you really get a sense as you open all the way up here just how many people have come in here.
So they're westbound on Hollywood.
Yeah, actually, I got that wrong. They came down a block south. When I was over at Santa Monica Boulevard, they came down a block south. They're on Sunset now.
Okay, but they are westbound on Sunset.
Correct, and the other group was westbound on Santa Monica Boulevard.
Okay, and again, you know, the thing is, you mentioned, you know, a different group moving off. That is somewhat troubling. It's inspiring in a sense to see the groups stay together. When they start splitting up and larger 50 to 100 group of people start to leave the main protest, that's when you start to wonder, why are you leaving the protest? And that's the thing. Like yesterday, the Van Nuys protest, and there was protests in Hollywood as well that were peaceful until small groups of people broke off and started causing damage. That's when it became, that's when the looting or the damage to property began.
Exactly, and we have two large groups. I mean, what's going to happen when the curfew comes into effect? If we still have thousands and thousands of people spread out over several blocks and in two major groups, how they're going to handle this if it does tragically become violent again, and we see the looting, it's going to be a huge challenge for law enforcement. Now, that larger group you're looking at was on Sunset westbound, and then they turned northbound on Vine, so they're headed back up towards Hollywood Boulevard. And you can tell those, we open up out of the shot, we're in the front of them, I believe, and then you can see that group around the corner. Every time I seem to look out and get a grasp of everything, you know, there's 100 more people. We have, even on some of the other streets, I really can't push around or move the camera around and show you because it just would disorient you as you're watching. But on other blocks, several other blocks, there are groups of 30, 40 people, and I think right now, those aren't a group of people that are trying to do anything they shouldn't. They're trying to find where the other marchers are. They're trying to get together. It just doesn't appear that there's a lot of real good coordination between the two groups.
Well, you know, as you showed these two groups, Scott, it does appear as if somehow the word has been passed that everybody is going to a certain place. And you're right, a lot of those streets offer you an opportunity maybe to take a shortcut and get to the main group. Maybe you're trying to move, but it does look like everybody's trying to get together. I mean, when I'm looking at this shot, and I know this shot right here, they're headed towards the main group, yes?
Well, this is the main group. I open up out of the shot. They were on Sunset. They turned northbound on Vine. You're looking at Vine coming at us, headed north. We're right over the Hollywood Freeway. We're looking south. So come to the bottom of your screen there, and I think that's Hollywood Boulevard right at the end of the crowd right there. So they've been at this location before. You know, we've seen them turn down a street and all of a sudden say, no, we're not going to go down that street. We're going to come down this other street.
Well, now that's new what they're doing there, staying in the intersection there, right? Or are they continuing through it?
It's hard to say at this point. I mean, I'm not certain if they're waiting for other people to catch up with them. And when I said it, I don't think there's any coordination. I've seen this a lot with these groups, with the two groups. You know, it almost looks like somebody new is in charge every 10 minutes. Hey, let's stop in this intersection. Let's move this way. That didn't look coordinated to me. Now they're moving, you know, eastbound on Hollywood Boulevard away from Vine. But it doesn't appear that it's very well coordinated. And then the other group, I can't even see them out my window right now. They're blocked by, you know, buildings. But it looked like they may have turned westbound on Santa Monica at Highland. I'm getting some information of that. So that's interesting. If they're westbound, they're headed away from this group that is eastbound. So it's hard to say if they're going to come together. I think the protesters probably are here, would rather all be together in one spot, in unity, you know, with one point to make. But it looks like the coordination is poor. But, you know, LAPD, the footprint is really, really small. I see them out my window in force if they have to come in and, you know, they have to stop, you know, anything from happening in this area. Hopefully that won't be the case. But, you know, they're ready to come in, but they're not. They're not forcing this crowd down certain streets. They're not setting up skirmish lines, except for that one I told you about. They didn't want these individuals down by the Kodak Theater, and that's somewhat understandable. So it really is, so far, it's been peaceful. It's been handled well, I think, by law enforcement. You know, you don't want to put the National Guard on these corners and have the crowd have to confront them. So it looks like they're going to let these people go, these marchers go just about wherever they want, and that is a good thing. Now look at this. Open up for me, Jamie. And Philip, this is really going to give you a feeling of the size of the crowd. Open up and tilt up. And then, so this is back on Hollywood Boulevard, coming eastbound towards us. Now go to the left, which is going to be south. So that whole street right there is full of marchers. That's Vine northbound. Keep going to the left. And then all the way down to Sunset. All is filled with people. Keep going. I think we still, there you go. And there's Sunset, and then there's still more people on Sunset. So we're approaching, and this is the larger group, but there's another group that's, you know, half this size at least. So I think we're looking at close to 10,000 people now. The size of the crowd, astonishingly, has just grown quickly.
Remarkable. Tony Cabrera is on the ground. He is in Hollywood, and I can see him standing by. And Tony, it looks like you've had a couple of people that you've been able to talk with as well while you're down there.
Definitely, Philip. This is Birch and Brea Boulevard. So this is the heart of Brea. You can see the Edward Cinema there. A lot of people who aren't from the Brea area come here for the restaurants, for the shops that are right down Birch Street here. And it is now full of people. The protest just started. And you see a couple hundred people already here on each of these corners, peacefully protesting with their signs up, ready to make a statement. And I want to bring in some local residents here who I've been chatting with. Just why is it so important for you to be out here in your city to express yourself?
Well, I think there's two issues going on. We have police brutality going on. We also have, you know, we need to find a middle ground. Like anything, I believe that there's good and bad ones, you know. I myself have a lot of friends that are policemen, and they're awesome, you know. So I think it's important to point that out. Also, the other issue is the looting. I don't think looting solves anything, you know. If anything, it makes things worse, you know. We got to make sure that we're peacefully protesting, you know, First Amendment, you know, be heard, and so we have the right to that. So I'm okay with everything that's going on. It's just the looting, I'm not okay with that.
Now, as we look in these live pictures at downtown Brea, you can see that the businesses are not boarded up as we saw in other cities in preparation of a protest. So, I mean, that to me is a statement that Brea feels comfortable with this protest, that they're not concerned.
They have confidence in everybody, the people of Brea, that it's not going to get out of hand, because that's what it's all about. It's about peaceful demonstrating and get the word out for Mr. Floyd, and at the same time for all the business owners, people that developed the city.
Right. We have some of our businesses here giving out waters. They're sitting outside with water bottles, helping out the protesters. This was well organized. We said it was going to be peaceful, let our voice be heard, you know, but always making sure our small businesses are taken care of, you know.
In the city of Brea, we really do communicate very much with our neighbors. We're friends with our neighbors. Our neighbors have businesses here. Our family has our businesses in here. So I think if we just work and have love and understanding and forgiveness and get the word out that the police brutality needs to stop. We need to,
end police brutality. We want change. We want something to happen, of course, you know.
Something positive that could come out of all this hate and anger.
Now, I did notice when a car drove by and yelled out a profanity towards police, and that angered you. So can describe those emotions that came during that moment.
Well, the police have to go against so many different elements, you know, and they put their lives every day on the line. So we have to defend our police officers. The officers are there to defend us. If we didn't have police officers, we would not have any protection against anybody.
You know,
so we need to respect them.
When these businesses get looted, people say, "Where is the police? Where is the police?" Okay. You know, we're saying now you need police. You need police all the time, but to a certain extent, right? We don't agree with what happened with Mr. Floyd. Of course not. That needs to be addressed. He should be put away for life. Maybe, you know, he killed a man, but we have to make sure that we get our point across and help our brothers and sisters get this, you know, together and making sure we're heard.
Thank you so much. You know, they are saying, you know, George Floyd, that is the #1 reason why they're out here, ending that police brutality, but still in peace and in support of everybody that's out here live here in the city of Brea. We're going to send it back to you.
Okay, thanks, Tony. And again, Tony Cabrera is in Brea, and it's kind of exemplary of how many different protests are going on right now. We saw one at Northridge, at Cal State University Northridge. We have reporters all over Southern California right now. Carlos Granda's in downtown LA. Rob Hayes is in Hollywood. You saw Tony in Brea. You'll see Sid Garcia in Monrovia, and Scott Rife is in Air 7 right now above the protest in Hollywood, and it's just growing in size, correct, Scott?
It's incredible. This is a 3-block radius. I want to come out of this shot and show you, and it's just about all the way around the entire block. So tilt up then, Jamie. We'll see him come around the corner right there, and then Hollywood Boulevard and Vine. And as we come and we open up, we're going to come down towards Gower. If you're familiar with Hollywood, you're going to see on the bottom of your screen. Now look, now as we go down to the left, go down Gower, and go all the way down Gower for me. It thins out a little bit, but this was the front of the line, and they're going to hit the end of the line. Keep going to the left, and you're going to see there are still some people marching there. So open up out of this shot, and there is a row of people all the way around. You see the wide shot here, that entire block. So the size of the crowd just seems to be exponentially growing very, very quickly. And there's another one over on Santa Monica Boulevard. Not quite as big as this one as far as we know, but it's sort of out of our view at the moment. But certainly a huge response here today in Hollywood.
Okay. All right. Scott, thank you very much. And as that crowd goes, we also see a crowd growing right now in Grand Park. That's in downtown Los Angeles, and Carlos Granda has been there for a little while now. And Carlos, what's been the mood at your location?
This has been a very peaceful protest. This has been going on for several hours, probably around 11 a.m. or so, and you can see behind me, the crowd is now starting to move away, but throughout the morning, throughout the last few hours, there have been speeches, people have been getting down, kneeling, they've been praying, but everything has been extremely peaceful. Right now, the crowd is moving. They've decided to move away from City Hall. You can see City Hall right there that's protected by LAPD officers as well as the National Guard. The protesters have been here for several hours, but now they're moving, heading south, and now they're heading right on First. So they seem to be heading west on First Street. You may be able to see them out there in the distance. Not sure exactly where they're going to go, but again, thousands of people here, several thousand people. But again, it's been very peaceful, all sticking to the message that they want to change the system, that they're outraged at the death of George Floyd. So what they're trying to do now is walk down the streets of downtown Los Angeles, and they're heading right there to the corner of First Street, and we're waiting to see where they go. But again, this has been a very peaceful demonstration, very peaceful protest. Nothing that we've seen so far. People have been bringing water, offering free food. So it's been a very peaceful protest. And as you can see, they're now crossing the street, and they're heading south on First Street. So they're going to be heading south on First Street through downtown Los Angeles. We're waiting to see where they go from here. But again, you can see the size of this crowd, several thousand people. Back to you.
Carlos, as this crowd continues to grow, do you get any impression that once curfew hits, they're going to go ahead and disperse? Do you think maybe that's the reason it's starting earlier today?
You know, I don't want to guess if they're going to start to disperse. It seems like right now they just want to keep it going for a little bit. They're marching down the street. I mean, there's still some people here that seem to be leaving here at Grant Park, but it's very few. The majority of the group is taking part in this march down through the streets of downtown Los Angeles. So obviously, if you're heading to downtown Los Angeles, expect it to be a traffic mess, because people are now taking over some of the streets here around the City Hall, the Los Angeles Police Department headquarters. That's the federal courthouse there on the right. So they're now going through the streets, and this is going to be a while because, again, there's thousands of people here in the street.
Okay. Thanks much. And if there is a silver lining to the safer at home order with COVID, you don't have the general traffic that you would on just a random June 3rd here at 1 o'clock in the afternoon. So this is a special edition of Eyewitness News. Ellen Leyva is now here. I'm Philip Palmer, and we've been covering several protests around Southern California.
Certainly have. You made a good point. You know, everybody seems to be starting earlier today, and perhaps it is because of the curfews. But nevertheless, it's really a pleasure to be able to cover stories like this and give everybody a platform to, you know, they're sharing their voice. They're going out there. They're making all this effort to go out there with their signs and peacefully walk. They're certainly getting their message out, and we're happy that we can help with that along. So we're going to check in with Scott Wright. It appears to be that, Scott, you tell us what's going on.
Fine, that vehicle stopped there. Looks like it wanted to be a part of the protest, and that man got out with a bullhorn. And when that happened, as we open up out of the shot, this portion of the march stopped in the intersection and split off from the other parts. So we have like 4 or 5 different groups, probably 1,000 or more people in each at a lot of the corners. This one, Hollywood and Vine, but at Sunset and Vine, there's a large group there as well. So we understand that they're going to have a wide perimeter, that the protesters who put this all together, if there is a plan, it's for them to march through Hollywood, have a wide perimeter throughout all of Hollywood, and then eventually come down to the Hollywood division of the LAPD on Wilcox south of Sunset. LAPD is prepared for that. We understand they're not going to allow them actually onto the division there, that division of Hollywood division of the Los Angeles Police Department. They have 150 police officers there to protect it. But it looks like at this point in time, if there is some sense of a plan, that's going to be it. But once these cars got stranded in the intersection, we got somebody up on the roof of the vehicle with a bullhorn. They stopped here, and there's probably 5 or 6 intersections similar to this right now in the Hollywood area.
It's interesting that you chose 150 officers that are not going to let the protesters go somewhere. That just seems like almost an insurmountable task if the protesters decide they don't want to be stopped. But right now, again, the one thing that we've noticed throughout all of the protests is how peaceful they are. It's in mass, but there are a lot of people out there at multiple locations. One of them is Manhattan Beach. We had a protest in Northridge, and you saw at Cal State University Northridge, there were a lot of people sitting down, kind of bleeding into an intersection. But here we are in Manhattan Beach, and we're looking there at the Strand, and it looks as if you've got just people walking down the Strand. So another protest, peaceful march, walking right next to the beach, where people might normally be out jogging and riding their bikes. And Well,
Yeah.
pre-COVID, heading to the beach, now you've got an empty beach and the Strand filled with protesters.
Exactly. And, you know, it's wonderful to see all these protests popping up in every little pocket of our area. You know, it's and all so far been peaceful. On the left-hand side of the screen, I don't know if what we're seeing there, those
That's
cars.
the National Guard.
Okay.
So Scott Reif may be able to explain to us if the protesters have now reached a turning point.
Well, it's very dynamic, and the National Guard has moved off of Highland down to Sunset and Vine. The crowd was headed westbound on Sunset. They got to Vine, and if you see that line of National Guard soldiers, but if you open up out of the shot and you tilt up, you're going to see a battalion of LAPD units on the top of your screen, and that line that went down Hollywood Boulevard and then came south on Gower and then came back westbound on Sunset. There they are right there, and it looks like the LAPD has stopped them. And then a little bit further, open up out of your shot and come back towards us, Jamie, please. You see the National Guard. So the National Guard, when we first got here, were only deployed on Highland or off of Highland on Hollywood Boulevard by the Kodak Theater. They have moved them around. And you know what really happens is these are the confrontation points, and you hope that it stays peaceful when this happens. But when the crowd goes in a certain direction and is not allowed to continue, you see that they get aggravated. And that has been some of the boiling points from some of the marches that we have seen over the last few days. Now, we certainly hope that's not the case today. We really, really do. But you can tell right now there are some areas of Hollywood that the LAPD, using the National Guard, is trying to control. They may be trying to push everyone into the same area. I'm not sure what the strategy is. I can only make an assumption based on what I see. But they've deployed here on Sunset at Vine, and they're forcing the crowd to go southbound there. So tilt back up, and you'll get a sense of how big the crowd is. And this is just a fraction of it as you tilt up past the patrol cars there, Jamie. And they are still rounding the corner, and another line there of LAPD officers. So open up for a moment, just so, and go down the street there. I just want to give you a sense of how many people are coming down that street there. That is traveling Sunset westbound. That continues for several blocks. Just open up all the way and show them the size of the crowd, if you would. And then all the way down that street there. So that really gives you an idea of how many people the LAPD has to try and control, if you will. And it's going to be challenging if this doesn't remain peaceful.
Scott, which area are they trying to keep the crowd from going into?
I wish I knew. At first, they only had the National Guard closing off Hollywood Boulevard at Highland, you know, by the Kodak Theater there. But just within the last couple of moments, they mobilized the LAPD and the National Guard to this corner, which is Sunset and Vine. Now, there's another group way off to the, well, they turn northbound. I can see them now. They're northbound on Highland away from Santa Monica Boulevard. They're probably a half a mile to the west of what you're looking at right now, and they're probably less than half the size of this crowd. But I'm not certain where the LAPD is deciding to set their lines, where they're setting up and why. You know, from my perspective, I don't know what they know, and I don't really have the information to make those decisions. It doesn't make any sense from here that they allowed them to march through this area a few moments ago, and now they're not. But then again, I don't have the information that they have.
Yeah.
Well, one of the things we have to remember is that the protesters are trying to get their message out. And right now, what you're looking at with National Guard, you'll see multiple people there with cameras. So what ends up happens is several people go right up next to whatever line it might be, whether it's LAPD or National Guard. They will stage their moment right there. You see people flying flags. You've seen people stage the George Floyd death, where there was a knee on top of a person, and it's done right in front of the forces, whether they be National Guard or LAPD, and that's the moment that they're looking for. They want to get the message out. They don't want the confrontation. The organizers of the protests don't want the confrontation. They want the message out. And so when you're sitting here looking at that particular shot, you could almost see all of the cameras jumping out to try to get pictures of the guardsmen, to get pictures of the protesters.
And that makes a lot of sense because everybody has a cell phone, everybody has a voice on social media, and you know it's a good way to do it. Look at this.
Well, and look at the distance between police and protesters. There is that distance. It is very tense right now because, and for the protesters, they don't know who among them has the same mindset that they have.
Exactly.
You have 1,000 people with 1,000 different personalities, and it can be tense because the officers, I can't see from this shot, might pull the batons. Yesterday, in an attempt to diffuse some of the situations, officers would holster the batons, so to speak. They would put them away, just trying to give the proper tone to the relationship with the protesters. But there are far more protesters here today than there are officers.
And quite often we see the protesters themselves, demonstrators, getting in front of the rest of the crowd and, having to calm them down or just to get them stand back a little bit. So you have people within their own community trying to keep a handle on it and keep it peaceful.
So Scott Reif is above it in Air 7HD, and we see these officers, Scott, but there are other officers that we don't see that are very close to what's going on, yes?
Yeah, there are more. There are other units standing by to come into this area if they have to. I think the key word is restraint, and the LAPD tries their best to use that, and as long as the crowd doesn't force on them trying to move through these lines, then everything seems to go just fine. But on Saturday over on 3rd Street, we had a line similar to this, and then all of a sudden everyone started to try and push back the police, and that's when things really made a turn, unfortunately. We don't see that here today so far, though. It seems like those protesters right there aren't agitated. The ones on Saturday at Pan Pacific Park were really agitated, throwing things at the police, pushing the police officers. We see the lines that have been set up today here in Hollywood by the officials, by the National Guard, by the LAPD. They've been observed by the protesters. So that's encouraging so far this afternoon. Everything has been very peaceful, and it doesn't look like anybody's trying to really press the issue.
See many people taking the knee. Looks like they might be on the move now, Scott. Maybe they realize, okay, we're not going to get past.
Well, you know what I saw, Ellen? If you could zoom in, Jamie, but not go there seems to be a protester and officer just walking away right now. He had a sheet in his hand, and he just went into the crowd. He's got the hand up. See, and the officer was actually pointing to him that direction.
Okay.
So he seemed to be a person that was involved with the protest, communicating with police, and I think police were telling him where he could go because the officer pointed. It was right in Jamie's shot. He pointed down that street, and immediately that person started walking down the middle of the street with his hand up with it looked as if maybe a map book or something, and he walked down there and everybody began to follow. So maybe it was just a need to communicate where they were allowed to go.
And that was very effective because you see everybody complying and leaving that area and continuing on their march because the march is the message. And the more coverage they can get, the better.
Yeah, it's interesting the way they splinter off. They come into these groups and, it's really hard to show you everything, but I'll just give you a little bit of an idea. And open up out of your shot, Jamie, right, was for a minute, and come pretty wide. And then go to the right. And then you see this little surface street right there. You see several people there. Now tilt up that street. Go all the way up that street, and we're going to go all the way back up to Hollywood Boulevard. And there you see another group. So originally we had 2 groups. Now we have 4, 5, maybe even 6, and we have a lot of people filling in to street corners trying to find out which group they're going to go to. So, I mean, I think we're looking not just at 1,000, but in the tens of thousands of people now. As you look out the window, you see all sorts of groups positioned to try and join one of these 4 groups. I also see one of the off-ramps from the 101 freeway shut down, and actually it looks like several. So come, where are you, Jamie? Come towards us. And I want to show the folks the 101 freeway. It's going to be right down below us as you continue towards us on the Hollywood freeway at Hollywood Boulevard. Keep coming. I know it seems like you're not going to run into anything. But right there you see the LAPD. They've shut down the 101 freeway southbound transition to getting on Hollywood Boulevard westbound. And one of the reasons may be as we open up out of the shot and come back to the crowd, we'll be looking west. They may be trying to stop that traffic from continuing westbound into the crowd. As this crowd grows bigger, they really would prefer not to have vehicles just trying to get through hit this crowd. So they're trying to control this as well by shutting down some of the off-ramps from the 101 freeway. Looks like Santa Monica Boulevard and Hollywood Boulevard that I just showed you are closed. But it's phenomenal. I've covered a lot of protests, and I don't think I've seen one as spread out in groups, large groups, like we're seeing here today. There's 4 or 5 of them, and then it seems like almost every street corner you look at, there's another group trying to figure out who they're going to hook up with as far as the groups. And if our information is correct, they'll all come together sometime this afternoon at the Hollywood division of the LAPD over on Wilcox.
Wow, that's going to be quite a crowd.
Well, I wonder, Scott, as you talk about breaking or closing those off ramps, the people who are here at this protest right now came together earlier today. What you're also doing, along with keeping people safe by not having cars driving through that area off the freeway, would you think that maybe that's an idea to keep people who are just wanting to join this late in the game from getting down in there? These people are here to protest, and they've been here all morning, and it's been peaceful. And you're also eliminating outside influences from being able to drive into the area and join the party late.
That could be. I mean, it could be a double-edged sword. At one point, you just don't want too many people coming in here late, as you mentioned. On the other hand, I think the LAPD wants people to have the ability to come out and protest. Like, I'm looking at the 101 freeway, and the Gower off-ramp is open. So you could get off on Gower, you could park, and you could join this group. The Highland off-ramp is open. I just think because this crowd and this march of people here has been on Hollywood Boulevard, they just decided to stop that westbound flow in case the crowd gets so big that it blocks traffic altogether. But it's quite phenomenal how many groups we have out here and how big the crowd has gotten. We took a look at it, I think at about, I don't know, 11:30 or so. It was supposed to start at 12, and there might have been 100, 150, and then it went to 1,000 in like 15 or 20 minutes, and then it just exploded after that. I had heard a moment ago that the other group that's a little smaller than this one, or one of the other 4 groups, is on La Brea. Now, we're almost here at Hollywood Boulevard in the 101, so that's a long ways away over to La Brea. That might be a mile and a half or so. So if they're all going to come together, they're certainly going to do a lot of walking. There's no question about that.
Wow. I guess it makes sense to close off to traffic because once the cars are in there, they're trapped.
Yeah.
That would be a big traffic mess as well behind the crowds.
And a lot of off-ramps are open for people to come down and join this march. It doesn't look like they're really saying, hey, you started a little late, we're not going to let you in. That could be the mentality, but I don't see it. If that was the case, they'd get the CHP to just shut down all of the off-ramps, and they haven't done that.
Well, after hearing from George Floyd's brother yesterday and the message that they wanted to get out about peaceful demonstrations and to honor the memory of George Floyd, maybe that's changed a little bit of the climate of some of these protesters. Who knows?
You can certainly hope.
Marches, yeah.
I just keep getting struck when we talk about the size of this protest. This is Tuesday. And if this was a work day, can you imagine the impact to just the general commute through Los Angeles would be if we weren't in the middle of COVID, with everybody basically staying home, although starting to reopen things. What a extra punch that has been for many small business owners.
Exactly. And, you talk about people wanting to finally go out to dinner in dining restaurants. Well, a lot of people just stayed home, and you can't blame them, and especially the curfews. You don't really have much of a choice.
For sure.
So, yeah, it has been what did you say? It seems like it was so long ago, and it really wasn't that long ago. But just if so much has happened since then, it's a strange thing what time has been for a lot of people. Say time's going really fast, even though I'm not doing anything. I'm home. I'm home.
So we're in special coverage of several protests around Southern California. Scott Reif has been above this protest for some time, and it's really. You look at that particular street, the protest, peace march to demand justice for George Floyd, but that is a part of this. And it is really hard to grasp how many people are there because that's just part of it. They have, and Scott, we talked about splinter groups. This is not really splintering. They just went different directions, and it's multiple large groups, but are part of one protest.
Exactly, and they all started together. That's why it seemed like there might have been a little confusion amongst those that were actually putting this protest on and the marchers going in different directions. But this is an interesting shot as they turn back southbound off of Hollywood Boulevard. I want to open up, Jamie, and then I want you to pan to the left and look down Sunset. And as we look at Sunset, you're going to see some of the authorities are set up, and you're going to see that grouping once again at Sunset, and I believe that's Highland. No, excuse me, it's Vine. where the National Guard has set up, and then a lot of police officers. That gives you an idea. There's another group there coming down towards the 101 freeway, but just keep tilting up on that street. And I wanted to give folks an idea of the resources that law enforcement does have here. They haven't needed that, but they did close this down. You see, that's where we had that large group a moment ago. And then as we tilt up, this is on Sunset. At Sunset and Vine, there we have the National Guard standing by. So we do have, if we come back towards us and almost right underneath us, we have that group marching. And then they are being joined by the other group that was on Hollywood Boulevard, headed eastbound towards the 101. So those two may come together. There's two more major groups out here. And when they do all get together, it's going to be massive. It's going to be a sea of people in one area. If that does happen, and as I mentioned earlier, we believe the plan for the marchers is to end up at the Hollywood division of the LAPD.
Scott, one thing I think of is if you're just going to the Hollywood division of LAPD, that's not like there's an arena or a field or Grand Park there. Where would this many people, they would just be packed into the streets and surrounding streets?
They would be. It would be really difficult to have what you would think of as a big rally in front of the LAPD Hollywood division, because it's not that big of a division. It's not like the headquarters in downtown. And there are just streets around it. And when you start talking about having tens of thousands of people possibly all around that division, it's going to be interesting to see how the crowd will interact. Come right down below us, Jamie. Now, this has happened a couple times, and it's really been challenging for law enforcement. It can almost be straight down when you get to the 101 freeway. The crowd from time to time, as we've seen in the past, I'll go back to the entrance of the 101, has gotten onto the freeway. And you see that CHP is there. They have several units. They do not want this crowd on the freeway, that is for sure. When that happens, it's dangerous for the motorists, and it's obviously dangerous for the protesters. There's not a lot of traffic on the 101. It's wide open, so people are traveling at a high rate of speed. But right now, at least right underneath us, they have marched by and over the 101, but fortunately not onto it. And then let's just follow this line. We're going to have to break for fuel here in a moment. But come up fairly quickly for me, Jamie, and tilt up. And then when you see the crowd bend around to the right, go ahead and follow that street. So we're on Sunset. Now follow that street all the way to the right, and you see a line of people there. And we're going to follow that all the way up to Hollywood Boulevard. Just keep going if you would, and a little quickly. And then there's Hollywood Boulevard. Now come on down Hollywood Boulevard, and it's just a line of people as far as we can see until we go to the left and follow that row if you would, until we lose the people along Hollywood Boulevard. So that gives you an idea. I mean, that's probably well over a mile of people stacked up, and this is one of four groups. So we are getting to the point where we're seeing a size of a crowd like we had, on the Women's Day after Donald Trump was elected president. I don't know if you remember that, but that was one of the biggest crowds I've seen in Los Angeles ever, and that was in downtown. And some of the May Day parades out of MacArthur Park into downtown. This is rivaling that. We're starting to see that many people.
Wow, it'll be interesting to see when they merge and
then it's
where
early.
they go and what happens.
Well, Scott, we're going to let you go get fuel, but Carl Schmidt is on the ground, and is Carl, I'm just getting word that you're on the ground, so can you tell us where you are? Are you part of this group?
Okay, copy.
I heard the crowds. They have taken to surface streets. They went right down my street. I'm currently standing at the corner of Curzon and Sunset here in Hollywood, but a very large crowd that moved through here just moments, just standing back watching. Again, just like yesterday when I was covering it on Sunset, very peaceful. They are now all heading west on Sunset Boulevard, back up towards Crescent Heights and Sunset area, but quite remarkable to be in my apartment working and hearing the noise. I mean, the helicopters and sirens have been going constantly, but suddenly to hear that thunder of voices coming down my neighborhood street was something else. There actually, if I come back up here, there's still a few last remaining people making their way down Curzon, and I'm guessing that they will join the crowd on Sunset. But it is interesting that it is coming off the main roads off the freeways. I know that we mentioned that they were on the 101 just a moment ago, but they have all really splintered out and are now taking sort of surface streets.
Interesting, Carl. Yeah, it must have been a strange sight, Carl. Suddenly, protesters outside your house. Have you? I know that you can. You're friendly. You can talk to some of them and find out perhaps if there's a plan and where they're going. I give you that mission.
Oh, thanks, Alan. Well,
You're
let's
welcome.
see. I've got a few people coming down here towards. Hey guys, we're live with ABC at the moment, KBC. So, how long have you guys been walking with everybody?
Well, I live down the street, so I'm trying to catch up.
So you heard the noise as well on your street, or were you already part of it?
I was watching it on the news. I was just waiting for them to get by my crib so I could be a part of the movement.
And do you know where the general direction is?
I don't.
Okay.
We're trying to catch up right now.
All right. Okay. Well, good luck. Stay safe. Keep it peaceful.
Thank you.
Well, you can get an A for effort, Carl.
There you go. So, thank you, Alan. But it is interesting. I mean, a lot of us, it's one thing to be seeing it on Sunset Boulevard and Hollywood Boulevard and all these main roads, but when you suddenly hear the noise coming down, you know, a leafy green street here in Hollywood, it catches you off guard. And as that young lady just said, you know, she was watching it on television, heard the noise, and she's joined in. But yes, I will tell you, there's got to be at least 600-700 people in that group. And as I stand here on the corner of Curzon and Sunset, they are all heading westbound on Sunset.
Okay, Carl. Thank you very much. So Carl and Scott have been talking about the protest in Hollywood. The shot that you're looking at on your left is downtown with Grand Park. There are thousands of people in Hollywood, and then you have a lot of people in Grand Park. We saw a moment ago through this shot, a lot of people had taken a knee, and then they all stood back up. This seems to be more of a traditional protest where you'd have people gather, and if you've ever been to Grand Park, you know that there's plenty of room there, and you'll hear speakers, you'll see people. And the one thing that you might miss with some of the shots, you heard Carl and that woman that he was talking to, and then you see this shot, we're not hearing what's going on at these protests. And the one thing that you need to remember is we keep saying peaceful protests, and they are. Mm-hmm. That does not mean they're not emotional. There is a simmer of emotions there where there is much confrontation. When you talked about the noise, when Carl talked about the noise outside of his house, there are chants, there's yelling, there's name calling, there's profanity. There's not violence, and that's what makes it peaceful, and that's what we want. And so that is a lot of credit to the protesters, and it is also a lot of credit to LAPD that both sides have let each other be.
Exactly.
And when we say peaceful, that is non-violent. It is definitely an emotional protest. And you can see there in Grand Park, it almost looks as if there's a speaker there. We just can't see off who is in front and has their attention.
Yeah, and I think we have Rob Hayes on the ground. Is he in Grand Park or
he's in Hollywood?
Oh, Hollywood. Okay, sorry.
Is that audio good if I hold it here?
It is good. We can hear you now, Rob. You are on the air. What do you have going on?
Hey guys, we're at the corner of Hollywood and Vine right here. And I just want to tell you, we're here about a half hour ago. This was a mass of people. The marchers, the protesters had come down this way. They had stopped at this intersection, and it was a very impressive sight, to be honest with you. There had to be thousands of people there, very peaceful. We ran into a car came over here. They're handing out water to all the protesters, so there is a lot of support for the people who are turning up here. And it's been a challenge trying to catch up with them. These marchers are moving, they're on the move, and so they're kind of like, they just moved east down Hollywood a short time ago, so you guys are following, obviously, using Air 7. But we show up, they keep moving. Fortunately, we got here, they stopped, we talked with some of them, and it's just a message of support that a lot of the people here in the city are giving to this movement.
Of that, Rob, thank you. We're going to check back with you in just a little bit, but we're going to check right now and go to BREA, where Tony Cabrera is standing by with a protest there. Tony?
Hi, Ellen. Yes, you were talking about emotions, and emotions are so strong here as hundreds have turned out to Birch Street and Brea Boulevard. This is the heart of Brea. There's a lot of restaurants down this way. The movie theater, the mall's not too far from this area. This is the heart of it, and people have come from near and far to make their voices heard. I do want to point out a group of people here that I found out that a group of 10 pastors from about 10 churches in Brea, I think they're all right here. A diverse group of pastors came earlier to pray. Let me just talk to you first. Why was it so important for you to do that and to be here?
Well, we needed to show a presence of God out here to let people know that God is not dead. He did not leave the earth. His spirit fills this whole place, and we just wanted to be out here as a presence for anyone who is hurting, who is sick, who just needs prayer. So we're here.
That's awesome. That's awesome. And we move along here to other pastors along this area. We've been chatting with a few of you, but what is it like for you to be here and to show your support and to see your city, the people of your city here too?
Well, it's great to be here because we certainly want to balance out the fact that justice needs to be served. It's a value that matters to God, and at the same time, we want our city to be a safe place. There is no better integrated, racially diverse group than the churches of Brea, and I'm so proud to be a part of it for such a time as this. And we are finding ways to seek unity, and we hope that translates to everybody here on these corners.
That was great, and he mentioned it. I don't see my camera went this way. But thank you so much. As we talk to just a number of different people here on the corner, and I want to talk to this woman here on the floor that you encourage people. You were going around. What were you encouraging people to do?
If we don't have any justice, we're not going to have any peace. I need us to stay calm and peaceful. I understand what's going on and how quickly these protests can turn, and we're all here for one peaceful reason, and that is for justice. So I want everyone to keep remembering, no matter the instigator, let's keep it peaceful, let's keep it to the point, and let's keep it for the justice.
That's awesome. Thank you so much. And it has been. Are you with him? Okay. Can I talk to him? This is one of the youngest demonstrators here. What is it like for you to be here and to be with all the people around you?
Very, very nice.
Yeah? Is it cool to look around and see everybody supporting each other?
Yeah.
Yeah? What's your name?
Ren.
Yeah? All right. Thank you so much. Well, there you go. Here again on the corner of Brea and Birch, where people had just come out. We didn't know what to expect. This is one of the smaller towns in Orange County, but sure enough, hundreds of people are here. As far as the police presence, we saw a couple of police cruisers nearby, but they were just kind of driving by. They aren't set up in a visible spot, at least. But so far, so good here. And as they were all telling us, they're here to peacefully make that statement. So we'll send it back to you.
Okay, Tony, thank you very much. Well, we want to take you right now to Houston, where there is a giant demonstration, protest, march happening there. Right now, more than 20,000 people are in downtown Houston for a march, of course, honoring George Floyd, and Houston being his hometown. This march started at 3 p.m. Houston time. At Discovery Green, and then we'll move to City Hall for that rally. It's organized by Houston entertainers. It will include Floyd's family, some of whom are flying in to attend this ceremony. Crowds have gathered in advance of this march, as you can see there, and they can be heard chanting for peace. And even Joel Osteen, that Lakewood Church pastor, is going to be leading a prayer with members of Floyd's family.
Well, and when we first saw the shot, it struck me as Hollywood because of the size of the crowd. And but you can tell, again, it's such a connection for George Floyd because he had been from there just before going to Minneapolis, where he wanted to restart his life, to move to Minnesota and start things anew after having lived in Houston. So clearly Houston is going to be deeply moved by what happened. But that is quite the sight. And again, as you mentioned, the chanting, and you can hear their voices all the way across several time zones.
Yes, and I guess officials have urged those attending this march to have their voices heard while demonstrating peacefully. And of course, they said any violence, of course, is being discouraged. But just before the start of the march, City of Houston sent out an alert for the public to report any suspicious behavior, because they want this to be a peaceful demonstration in honor of George Floyd, with his family in attendance who've asked it to be, have your voices heard, you know, yell, speak loudly, do whatever you need to do, but keep his honor.
Right, and they were making the point because there was some vandalism there Friday night, but it's been amazing and quite moving, actually, the active nature of the Floyd family, trying to make sure that people understand what they want here. And I think if you look at what's happening here in LA and you look at what's happening in Houston and for the most part around the country, that message, that word is being heard. His family is being heard.
Mayor of Houston, Sylvester Turner, urging people to wear masks and social distance as much as possible. He also said, quote, "This is a salute to George and an acknowledgement that he should not have died the way he did. I hope people will honor George and not deface his name and his memory."
I will say that it is an interesting dynamic, and it does make the police and the law enforcement's job very difficult for everyone to be wearing masks. It is an odd sensation and feeling when a typical protest 10 years ago, everybody would be out there and only the people causing harm would be wearing masks to conceal their identity. But officials are encouraging people to wear masks, and it is a very odd feeling, especially when you've got all of that emotion going around and there's so much anger and at the same time, peace. So it's a very emotional time, and you really have an interesting element there when you're talking about what law enforcement has to do with most everyone wearing masks.
Exactly.
For their own safety. Now, this is Grand Park, again, I do believe.
Yep.
Yes, downtown, and you can see, again, this is very similar to what was happening in Hollywood. If you see the police line on the steps, they are letting the protesters gather, but their presence is telling them where they can't go. And that has really been effective so far, it seems like, with LAPD and all of the law enforcement, whether it's in BREA or here, to allow the protesters to protest.
Right.
But just let them know. And there's been as much communication as possible. You can't come here.
You can even tell by the language, the body language of the officers, you know, it's a relaxed mode right now. And hopefully it'll stay that way. They're allowing these protesters, demonstrators to march and do what they need to do.
And it is interesting if you can see in this shot kind of the dynamic as to what happens. See, now everybody they knelt down, but then there are those who are closer to the law enforcement line. And in many cases, there's that's when some of the anger is thrown at the police officers. But it does look like, in this circumstance anyway, that they had a leader of a moment of silence, very possibly, for what's going on. We just aren't able to hear that. But Carlos Granda will be able to tell us more about that once we get a chance to talk with him.
We have a very special guest on the phone right now with us. We have Sweet Alice Harris, of course, community organizer based at Watts, Los Angeles, founder and executive director of Parents of Watts, a local youth outreach group. And Sweet Alice.
Yes, ma'am.
Oh my goodness, it's nice to hear your voice. And how are you doing through all of this? And what are you going through?
Well, we've gone through this before, and I've been working on it 54 years, and it is paying off now. We are in Watts, but you would think we was out here in Hollywood. Nothing is happening here that's emotional, wrong. We're not breaking in anything. You know, we're not fighting nobody. We're just shopping and going home.
Well, Sweet Alice,
shopping, talking, and going home.
What you know, the work that you've done for 54 years, does it make you, in a sense, swell with pride when you see so many people gathering to get their message out? They're emotional, they want their voices heard, but they're not violent. How does that make you feel when you see something so massive all across the country?
As long as it's not violent. Two wrongs don't make a right. As long as it's not violent. You can always show your hurt, your sorrow, but you don't have to be wrong doing that. And that's what I have been teaching for 54 years, and it's paying off. We don't do that in Watts. No, we don't do that in Watts. We don't do it in Compton. And if I wherever I go, they won't do it. Because we just don't do that. We love one another. We help one another. But we're not going to hurt nobody. Ain't no need of me telling you it's all right to break in your house when I don't want you to break in my house. If I don't want you to take from me, I can't take from you. That's what we're talking about. Let's stop doing the wrong and let's keep doing the right thing. Keep letting people know. We know we've been hurt. We've been talking to the police officers. We know how they are. Not all of them is bad now, because I work with some of them. But we got some of them. And you can see what happens. But what we got to do is, we got to train. And I asked one of the officers once, and he told me he would. Send me somebody here at the Parents of Watts where we are teaching the young people. We just got through teaching 32 young men, fire extinction technicians. My husband carried them to Sacramento. They took the state test, and every one of them passed it. And now they're working with the fire department. And they got in time when they need them for these fires. I asked the police chief send me a teacher to let me learn the young men how to teach them about the test. Because every time one take a test, he don't pass it. Not that they don't want to be police officers. They can't pass the test. I asked them to send me a teacher and let me teach the young men how to pass that police test, and they become police officers. It's bad to send a police officer out in let's say Watts, a black neighborhood, and he done already heard before he got here, if you go there, they're going to kill you. And that's the first place they send him. And what you think he coming in for? He coming in because he's scared and he got his gun on his hand. And the first thing you say, he going to shoot you. We know that. We see it. But they won't help us. We got to send me a teacher. And like the fire department that did. Send me a teacher. And let's train some of these young black men just coming out of college how to pass that test. It ain't because they won't pass the test. They just don't let them pass the test. And I know that. I know that. Don't let them pass the test. We got to stop that.
I think it'd be wonderful to have officers patrol the areas where they grew up and where they were raised, and they have the empathy and they know what's happening in that community.
They will stop anything going on. They will stop it.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
They wouldn't have to worry about that because they got to hold their job up.
Well, Sweet Alice, I think your words will be heard, and they have been heard, and they've been heard for 54 years. So thank you so much for joining us and trying to give us a little bit of a perspective and hope. Every community, every community in the country wants their police officers to come from their community. So I think her idea is spectacular, and I would hope that it takes off, and hopefully they will get a teacher.
Everybody loves Sweet Alice.
Yes, they do.
We appreciate her. All right, well, we are looking downtown. This is a Grand Park where another demonstration, and this one's been quiet. Maybe perhaps somebody is speaking. It looks like perhaps there are some speakers there. We don't know. We don't have the audio quite yet, but so far it's just been a gathering there at Grand Park.
Well, I'm just going to pass along one little thing real quick. Just sent to me from my wife, who's watching at home, says Sweet Alice is a beautiful human. Aww. And she says keep doing what you do. I don't know if Sweet Alice is still listening, but I think her words matter to a lot of people. Yep. And it's just wonderful to hear that you know, we know that. Yeah. She is a sweet human being, and I hope that she heard us loud and clear.
I hope so too.
Well, newscopters up over Manhattan Beach. We see the park, the protest going on at Grand Park there in downtown Los Angeles. We saw this protest that was on the Strand. And it does look like it's still kind of on the Strand. If you've ever been through Manhattan Beach or Hermosa Beach area, there's the very extended bike paths. So it does kind of look like that might be the bike path there that is connected to the Strand. So they can kind of keep moving along.
There you go.
But it doesn't actually. No,
they got off the Strand and now
they're just on one of the streets. But they will be able to navigate pretty easily back over to the Strand, which is just there to your left. It's kind of washed out with the sand there. But again, another protest here in Southern California.
Definitely more visibility along this area as opposed to the Strand. So perhaps that was want to get their maximum message out that they can. Don't know how many numbers are there, but it's quite a few numbers in Manhattan Beach.
Well, and we're not sure where they might be going either. That's not nearly the size there that we saw, at some of the other places. But I think it's just interesting how here on a Tuesday, and by the way, I said June 3rd earlier, it's June 2nd.
Oh, okay.
Another note from the wife. But there's so many gatherings. There were multiple 4 or 5 groups in Hollywood. They were, populated throughout Hollywood, all trying to get to the Hollywood division of LAPD. But then you look at Grand Park, and then you look at Manhattan Beach. We have Tony Cabrera in Brea. We've got other parks as well. Monrovia. They're gathering all over Southern California here at the beginning of June to show what they want to say peacefully. And
we saw Riverside yesterday, multiple places, and it's nice to see all the different crowds popping up in different neighborhoods, and they don't have to travel far. They can go in their own communities, and they can march peacefully and do their demonstrations. We are looking at, on the left-hand side is the Grand Park in downtown Los Angeles. On the right-hand side is Manhattan Beach. And we're going to check back in Hollywood as soon as we can. But can we go to Tony Cabrera? Okay, let's do that. He's in Brea. Hi, Tony.
Hi, yes. So just moments ago, this gentleman here was gathered with a big group right here. They were listening. And can you summarize what you were telling the crowd here?
I was telling the crowd a little bit of a background about myself, where I come from and what I represent. And I was protesting in LA, I was protesting in Long Beach, and then yesterday I was in Anaheim. And my word to these people of Brea, because I'm a resident of Brea, I live right down the street. My word to these people was that let's keep this city safe. Even if you have family members from other cities, whether it's Fullerton, Anaheim, LA, Inglewood, Huntington Beach, whatever that is, let's keep it small. Let's stay a community. We're strength in numbers. So we might as well do what we can within our community to make a change, and I feel like this is a perfect way to do it. If we're peacefully protesting, no matter what the police say, if they say it's an unlawful protest, if they say that we're breaking the law because of curfew, let's get out here early and let's just be strength in numbers and be as strong as we possibly can.
And as we look around through our live pictures here, and we're seeing such a diverse crowd out here. Correct. That is being peaceful, that is doing exactly what you're saying. What does that do for you emotionally?
Emotionally, it's very powerful, man, because I had a cousin that was murdered in LA 7 years ago by police. He was unarmed as well, and it's one thing what people forget is that we all react to stuff. All situations are different. If I wake up in the middle of the night and I stub my toe, my reaction might be a quick reaction. I might curse, I might get upset. If I'm on a road and I'm driving and somebody cuts me off, my initial reaction might be a middle finger, or I might take that reaction further and chase them down the street. But you gotta be able to bottle your emotions when it gets hectic like this. You gotta be able to perform under pressure. We all talk about things haven't been the same since Kobe Bryant passed away in March, and Kobe was one person that never folded under pressure. And I'm a Kobe fan, but I'm not even a Kobe fan, but I respect this game, and he's one person that never folded under pressure, and we got to take after that and all do the same.
Hey, there you go. That's awesome words right there. Thank you so much for sharing, and obviously inspiring to the crowd here. They were cheering after he made those words, so thank you so much.
Thank you.
We're here in Brea at the corner of BREA.
And I appreciate you as well for letting me to get my word out, and also for you being out here, putting your life on the line as well, being in front of these people and trying to get the good side of the media out there. I really appreciate that.
Thanks, man. That means a lot. That really does.
All right.
People in our industry appreciate that. There you go, guys. We're on the corner of Birch and Brea. Back to you.
Okay. Tony, thanks much. Now we want to go to Rob Hayes. As you, again, look downtown there on the left, Rob Hayes is on the right. And again, kind of shows you how many people are out there on a Tuesday. Rob, you might have some tough times hearing this, but go ahead.
Yeah, Hollywood and Vine right here. You can see a large crowd of people. The protesters have moved back in this direction. They are marching peacefully. Just about 2 minutes ago, maybe a minute ago, we just saw a long string of LAPD cars, probably a couple dozen at least, that were code 3 with the sirens going. But the protesters let them move through, and now the protesters are marching through the intersection here quite peacefully. They're chanting, and they're moving at a nice pace here and doing what they've been doing for most of the day today, which is just peacefully protesting. I'm going to take a look down the down Hollywood here.
Rob, can you hear me?
Yeah, it is. I hear you, yeah.
The question I have is, are they just, you were at this intersection earlier, so they've gone past it, turned around, and now they're going back? Or am I confused?
Yeah, that's what I was trying to express the last time you took us live. They're moving. There's not a whole lot of standing around. So whenever we show up at a spot where we think they are, they've already moved past. So we've set up camp here at Hollywood and Vine, and this is at least the probably third or fourth time that they've marched through this intersection. And take a look at the site. I mean, you guys obviously are watching this through Air 7 and through all the other cameras that we have, but this is a massive crowd, and it's thousands and thousands of people, and they are moving peacefully through the streets here with their message.
My goodness, that does look like a big crowd. That's by sight.
Yeah, what's been the emotion for you there, Rob, when people come by? Have they been confrontational with you, or do they just move right on by and just keep going?
Yeah, no confrontations at all. These people have been very, very friendly. They've left us alone for the most part today. We had a little issue yesterday. It was small. It's nothing really worth pointing out. But today it's been a joy to be here, and it's really encouraging, because if you take a look at this crowd, this is a rainbow of faces here. I mean, this is a really good subsection of Los Angeles here, marching together to get their message out.
Even kids out there today with their parents, it's nice to see that.
It really is. And, you know, there have been a few traffic issues where an intersection has been shut down for a short period of time or a stretch of Hollywood. But you hear the horns. You know, it seems like a lot of these people aren't honking in frustration. They're honking in support.
Yeah.
Certainly is.
And then you see a lot of, it's almost as if the people in the cars are they may not have intended to show up and be a part of a protest, but once they're there,
why not?
They're showing support with honking of horns. I've heard chanting out of windows, and not angry. They're just trying to let their emotions get out. But Rob, thanks very much.
Yeah.
I'm sure oh, you were going to say something?
No, I was just going to say, this stretch of Hollywood Boulevard is obviously closed down because of the march, but if we take a look over here at Vine, you'll see traffic's being held up, but the folks are just sitting there. You can hear them honking. I think they're not frustrated. They're just sitting there waiting for the crowd to go by, and I guess enjoying the sight.
Yeah, look, how can you fault these people? They're doing something definitely valuable to our society, and if you're in a car and inconvenience for a little while, so be it.
I think Carlos Granda is standing by, we're told, downtown. So, you have, it's just his shot. So we have the people who are on the move there at Hollywood and Vine, and they've been going back and forth, like Rob Hayes was mentioning. And then you have the other, which is more of a traditional rally. That is in Grand Park. And one of the things you see in that shot is the same thing that you've seen on almost all of these parades. Look at all the water there in the forefront. There's, generally speaking, at each of these gatherings, you'll see people handing out water, giving out food if necessary, trying to be of assistance to their fellow protesters around. In many cases, there will be a place where they've just set up shop with cases of water, and today especially, as hot as it is out there.
Yeah, good point. And this particular one in Grand Park looks like perhaps they're listening to a speaker. I see a person in a yellow shirt up there at the base of the stairs, so perhaps they're having some rally, speakers rally the crowd. like they did in BREA, as Tony was mentioning. That gentleman spoke to the crowd. But look at the crowd. It is just immense in Hollywood, and that line just goes back as far as you can see.
And, you know, in that circumstance, they really haven't had much of a speaker. But you're right. A lot of times these speakers, it's more impromptu. Somebody will grab a bullhorn and they'll hop up. And it can get so loud. You hear all the horn honking in Hollywood, and I'm sure it's the same at Grant Park there. It's hard to communicate to that many people because a bullhorn is not that effective when it's a mile-long protest march. Maybe it's a little better when you're all in Grant Park and listening. But that's also one of the difficulties with some of these marches is, you know, they didn't know where they were going. They just, when Carl was talking to that woman, she didn't know where she was going. She just wanted to be part. And it's hard to communicate to everybody where this is going. So it does seem like they're just going back and forth through that intersection and just having a long march.
Yeah. Well, you are watching Eyewitness News, special edition. We are just covering some breaking news. Not really breaking news. It's been going on for a few days, but we are wanting to give voice to these people who are demonstrating, and they go out and take their day, and they carry signs, and they walk for miles, and we're trying to relay their voice.
And I'm getting word that Carlos Grande is standing by, and he's been able to kind of go around, talk to some people, and find out a little bit more about what's going on there in Grant Park. Carlos?
Well, this is actually a very peaceful, almost very quiet protest right now. You almost can't hear anything. In the front over there, way in the back, they do have a couple of people with, as you said, bullhorns, but where we are, we can not even hear what they're saying. But you can hear the crowd occasionally chanting, which is what they're doing now. They'll occasionally respond to the person speaking. But again, this has been very peaceful, very quiet. It started hours ago. Then the crowd all left. They actually started a march through downtown Los Angeles, went through downtown Los Angeles for several blocks, and then turned around and came right back here again. And that's where they've been here. And again, it's been very quiet, very peaceful. There's some people here that are bringing water and snacks for people who might need it. And you can hear them chanting right now. But again, very quiet, very peaceful here. In the background, you can see the LAPD on the steps of City Hall, and they have barricades in front. So they're being kept on this side of the park, not blocking the street as they did before the march when they were blocking the street. Now the street is open, and that's the way it's been here. It's been like this for already about another hour since they returned from their march. But again, very organized. It's not a huge number of people. As you can see, Grant Park is only about half full. It's been just right now they're kneeling again, which they've been doing occasionally. They'll kneel, then they'll stand up, and then you'll hear some more speeches, then they'll kneel. And that's pretty much what's been going on the afternoon. But again, very organized. It seems like, even though it doesn't appear that there's anyone organizing it, it seems as if people are just doing this on their own. They're being very respectful. They're being just trying to get their message out. And right now they're being very quiet as they're kneeling, but they want to get their message out, and they want to show what they're here for. This is what they're here for, to get their message of that they're angry at what happened. They don't want it to happen again. Obviously, they want to get that message out, but again, not causing any problems, nothing at all. It seems to be very peaceful protest here. Back to you.
Of demonstration, but the same message. You know, Philip, we've been seeing an endless stream of people on Hollywood Boulevard. It's been incredible to watch.
And it just seems to not end. I think as interesting as it was to see Air 7 HD above the scene, and you could see a mile apart, you know, two large groups, it's almost more impressive from the camera where Rob is, because you can just see no end.
Exactly.
And it's just at least a mile of people simply walking, you know, impeding traffic, getting the message out. It's like a parade.
It is.
I would ask Rob Hayes if he's standing by to hear us. You know, it's kind of a mood of a parade where he was saying people are greeting him and saying hello as he comes by. But it's a sea of people, Rob.
Philip, I'm telling you right now, where we're standing, you cannot see the end of this protest. You know, they've been marching down this street this way for probably at least 15 minutes straight. So this is a massive crowd of people that have showed up here. And when you're talking about the people coming by, they give us smiles, they're waving at us. I mean, this is truly like an uplifting event. I don't want to sound sappy or anything, but I mean, if you look at the faces on a lot of these people, they have smiles, and they're here, you know, trying to support a cause that's very important to them.
Well, and we are now 3 hours into the parade gathering. When it started, it was about 11:30 when it started this morning, and we have done nothing but show images of people exercising their constitutional right to protest, free speech. We have yet at this point seen any kind of splinter groups get off of the topic and cause any kind of problems or issues. We ran into that yesterday afternoon and early evening. But that, I think, Rob, it is not being sappy. It is being an observer of what you're seeing. And it is remarkably different that today has turned into this massive show of protest without any secondary message coming out.
Yeah, I agree entirely. I mean, it's very heartening to see the city of Los Angeles coalescing like this, you know. And like I said earlier, you look here, and this is like if you just took a handful of LA, these are the people who are out here. It's not one particular group or one particular ethnic group of people. This is LA right now. This is what you're seeing.
Rob, that is certainly incredible. I mean, we could keep going back to you and there'd still be a stream of people coming your way, which is really wonderful to see that. We're going to perhaps stay on your picture, but on Skype we do have Dr. Tyrone Howard, professor of education at UCLA. And Dr. Howard, we spoke with you on Saturday. It was quite a different night that night than it is today. How do you compare the two? What are your feelings today based on what you're seeing?
Feeling better. People are mobilizing. They're protesting peacefully. They're letting the world know that they've had enough, that they're fed up. They want to see change. And so this is a different tenor, a different tone, and this gives us lots of hope and optimism moving forward.
What do you think is different from the weekend to now? Is it the protesters themselves policing themselves, not accepting things that don't line up with their message?
Well, I think what's different now is that I think the weekend we had raw emotion and anger was spilling over and people didn't know how to respond. I think time gives people an opportunity to make sense out of what they've seen and to organize and to mobilize and to figure out how do we bring together a multi-ethnic, multiracial, multi-age, multi-gender coalition to say we're tired of seeing Black lives being innocently lost. So I think people are now seeing that collective action can lead to change.
We are seeing certainly that, a rainbow of people out on the streets today. And how much do you think the message from George Floyd's brother helped in perhaps changing the tone of these demonstrations?
Well, I think the message from George Floyd's brother definitely helped, but I think people were already tired and fed up and frustrated with the kinds of police brutality that has unfortunately caused havoc before George Floyd. And we just hope we don't have to see the same situation happen again with another life lost. So I think the more voices that stand out, that speak up, that say we can mobilize, we can find a way to be the change that we would like to be, is how I think we ultimately reach our goals here. So I'm encouraged, I'm optimistic. I just hope that we sustain these efforts.
And Professor, or Dr. Howard, you're a professor of education, so you're dealing with college kids all the time. What's this generation like compared to 40 years ago, 30 years ago? Are they different? Does social media help them, hurt them? What do you see?
They are smart, they are savvy, they are innovative. They've used technology to leverage their voice. They are able to mobilize in ways we could never imagine. And I think part of what happens with young people is that they're impatient. They want to see immediate reaction. They don't see the long picture. They want to see results now. And I have to admire that about them because I think they oftentimes think that we want to push these issues down the line. Let's talk about it later. We'll address it 6 months from now. We'll resolve it a year from now. I think this generation of young people typically is going to serve as a catalyst for the change that we want to see. Every movement we've had in this country, young people have played a vital part of that because they are the ones who are willing to push the envelope to let us know that, you know what, we can be the change.
I agree with you. I see them with my own daughters, college-age girls and a little bit of postgraduate. But I feel like they're more evolved than in the past. I feel like they know more and they see the reality that, the color of your skin should not make a damn bit of difference. Pardon my damn.
No, absolutely. But I think that's what they're pushing us to recognize, that they want us to form a human coalition, to understand that oppression to any group affects folks everywhere. It's not just about racial justice. It's about gender justice. It's about justice for all the other groups who are undocumented, folks who are suffering economic depravity. And so I think young people see that in different ways, and I have to admire them. They're smarter than us, whether we don't like to admit it or not. They're more resourceful than us, and they have a sense of urgency that you have to, applaud them for.
Well, I have a 20-year-old, and I will never admit to him that he's smarter than me, but I don't know that would work well. But he has taught me a lot through this right now, Dr. Howard. And how do you teach a young person with, as Bruce Springsteen said, 57 channels and nothing on? So much information is so readily at their fingertips, and they are impatient. But how do you teach them that some things will require some time? And again, I'm not trying to say, oh, we need patience, let's put this off. Do you see what I'm saying with that question?
Absolutely. I've got 4 kids myself in their 20s, and I'll admit they're all smarter than I was at that same age. They're not smarter than me now, but they're smarter than
there
I
you
was
go.
at that time,
qualifier.
Right? But I think we have to find the happy medium. I think what we have to let them know is that, yes, there is a desire for some immediate change to happen right away, and we have to push that. But at the same time, we also have to understand the big picture. We're in a marathon. It's not a sprint. And so we have to help the younger generation meet us halfway to say that we've been through this before. We've seen challenges, we've seen struggles, but we can find a way to begin to put their urgency into action. But it's not going to happen tomorrow. It's not going to happen next week. And I think once we find that happy medium is when we'll start to see the kind of change that we know is ultimately going to happen, that we need to happen, because our young people will insist on nothing less than that.
Do you think we're getting closer to that finish line of the marathon?
That's a great question. This last couple of days has been encouraging to me on a number of reasons, on a number of levels, because we've seen such a wide range of people come together. Typically, we've seen only people of color who have been leading these marches. To see the kinds of representation of white people and Asian American people and Latinx people and African American people all fighting for the same cause is something that I don't know that we've seen in a long time. So I want to be hopeful, but I want to be cautiously hopeful that while we're making progress and that finish line might be coming up soon, that if we take our foot off the gas, we can find ourselves right back to where we were 10 years, 15 years prior.
Well, the one thing, Dr. Howard, I think all of us here as parents, because since we've talked about this as parents, the one thing that I think we could all agree with is I never want my son to stop speaking. I don't want him to not have this moment where he's getting his voice out, whether it's social media or his friends or his gatherings, because if he sees wrong, I think this generation will say that's wrong much more than maybe some of the generations in the past.
That's right. Dr. King's famous quote says, if you don't stand for something, you'll fall for anything. And I think too many women and men have stood and fought and unfortunately died tirelessly so that we would have the opportunity to speak our voice. And so you're spot on. We want our children to speak their voices. We want them to act responsibly. We want them to care deeply about justice, about humanity, and about the inclusion of all populations. So we want to encourage those voices. We want to lift those voices up. But we also have to make sure that we, the older generations, are not letting them down, to make sure we're doing our part in this struggle as well.
That's a wonderful message, and I'm glad to know that you are, with our kids of today's generation at UCLA, and it's wonderful to know that. And I hope that you stay safe, and we appreciate your time.
Yeah, thanks for joining us.
Yeah.
Thanks for joining us. You speak to these young people on a daily basis, and mine won't talk to me, but but thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Thank you for having me.
Dr. Tyrone Howard, a professor of education, and I think he just hits it spot on. And Ellen, you brought it up too. The impatience of this generation can be a good thing. It can be a good thing.
Yeah, my daughters have taught me a lot about that sort of thing. I think they're much more in the know, and the pulse of what's happening with young people, and it's inspiring to see that. But look at the crowd in downtown. It's certainly grown. If you see,
they've moved out of Grand Park. So whereas Carlos Granda had seen so many people almost at a rally, there's the shot where they were, and then we juxtapose to this, where now they have moved out into the streets, and it doesn't look like they're on the move so much that the Hollywood group is, but they have certainly at least moved out of the park.
Yeah. Speaking of on the move, we're going to go back to Hollywood and Rob Hayes and see if that crowd is still going by. Yep. Rob, how's it going there? It's amazing how many people turned out.
Oh, that crowd is still here, definitely. Ellen, here's Jamie, if you take a shot down the street, it's still coming. There is no end to this stream of people marching on the streets here. They are heading westbound on Hollywood Boulevard right now. We're at Hollywood and Vine, and this is just it's one of these sights that's really hard to believe when you stand here and you're surrounded by this, I guess, sea of humanity right now. It's just people chanting, people holding signs, Black Lives Matter, I can't breathe, yeah, no justice, no peace. I mean, you just take a look around here and it is a very, very peaceful, very uplifting moment here.
I feel moved. You know, it's a really wonderful thing to see, and I just can't help but get a little emotional about this.
Well, Rob, I don't know if you were able to hear Dr. Howard when he was speaking just a moment ago, but one of the things he said was one of the things that you had mentioned a moment ago, that this, you know, he was saying how this protest, this era is different in that you really see the human race coming together. It's not, you know, one group of people protesting a thing. It is everyone gathering together for a common cause.
I agree, yeah. Wholeheartedly, I agree wholeheartedly. The mix of people here is amazing. It's as if, you know, you took a slice of LA and they all turned out. And it's a really big slice of LA, let me tell you.
Yeah, I'd love to get an estimate on the crowd size.
The horns haven't stopped, and the crowd hasn't stopped. And are you at least starting to see the end of the line there, Rob?
Yeah, take a look at that, Philip and Ellen. Finally, it's unbelievable. I mean, how long have we been talking to you here at Hollywood and Vine? And finally, just a steady stream of people is finally, it looks like we may see the end there.
Incredible.
We see the end, but it's certainly not. There's certainly hundreds of people in your camera shots, and it's just remarkable.
And on the left-hand side, oh, go ahead. Go ahead, Rob.
Yeah, I was going to say, also keep in mind, just because this may be the end of the march, at this point, this march is continuing down Hollywood Boulevard.
Oh, they've been walking by you for at least 20 minutes now, right?
At least, yeah, a solid 20 minutes, I would think. But yeah, and it's not hit or miss. It is a steady stream of people.
Right. Yeah, earlier there were two large groups in Hollywood. I wonder if they've merged into one. We'll find that out shortly. On the left-hand side of your screen, by the way, that is downtown, where they seem to be. They're still standing still, but we'll have to see if they get on the move too.
Well, it sounds like Chris Christie is in Air 7 above the downtown LA shot, if I'm correct on. Oh, he's in Hollywood. So we have Chris in Hollywood. So the shot on your left is downtown. And yes, they moved out of Grand Park, but there's thousands of people there. Chris, we talked to Rob Hayes just a second ago. 20 minutes, 30 minutes easily of a solid stream of people. What's the perspective like for you from Air 7?
Okay, so this is shaping up to be really something that we have not seen in the last few days. First of all, the crowds are much larger. We're talking about 3,000 people in this shot here at a minimum, maybe 4. And this is going to be near Sunset Boulevard and Highland Avenue, where they are marching several city blocks long here through the city of Hollywood. Again, that's Sunset Boulevard on the right side of your screen. If we pan up to Hollywood Boulevard, there's a separate group of several thousand strong as well, and they are at Hollywood and Cahuenga. Both groups marching in this direction. Eventually, LAPD's goal, and they have actually had conversations with the organizers, is to converge these two groups over towards Wilcox at LAPD's Hollywood division. They have prepared at the station to receive these groups within a block of the station. They're not going to get right to the front door, but they are going to allow them to protest at one spot. As we get closer to curfew time, you can see them rounding the corner here at Sunset and Orange Drive. Again, both of these groups, several thousand strong, eventually expected to meet up over at LAPD's Hollywood division. But the mood down there is so peaceful. It is jubilant. It is a beautiful thing to see, obviously, and something really to behold from up here in Air 7 HD, guys.
And how far are they from that Wilcox Hollywood PD?
Great question. They seem to be doing a little bit of a loop here. They're going to make the left. So I'm not sure what route they're going to take to get to Hollywood Division, but the station's over at Wilcox. So they, I imagine, are going to be guided by LAPD at some point towards that direction. No telling on when they'll actually make it over there, though.
It is a remarkable logistic achievement if they can get all of these people in these multiple groups to arrive in one location. And especially, Chris, there's not a confrontation when they come upon a line of officers. There's really communication and then direction. That's been the name of the game. And you could just tell that the mood has changed since the original protests that we started seeing on Thursday, on Friday, and over the weekend, of course. Now, there were various elements within those protests over the weekend. Everybody here seems to be playing by the rules, marching very orderly, very peacefully with their signs, chanting, making their voices heard, and gathering in huge numbers. And what you don't see in the shot is a lot of PD presence. They are here, they are standing by, they're within a few blocks just in case they are needed to control the crowd control. If something goes sideways, God forbid somebody in there is up to no good. If there are agitators that branch off and cause any kind of trouble, just in case. The LAPD seems to have used the last 48 to 72 hours to really mobilize their forces and strategically manage these crowds without getting in their face, without a lot of show of force. They've been able to use communication as a diplomatic move.
And Chris, we heard from Dr. Tyrone Howard of UCLA, and he was saying, you know, Saturday it was still very raw, a lot of hurt emotion, and now it seems to be like people have taken a bit of a pause, perhaps listened to George Floyd's family, and now they still want to get their message across, and it's stronger than ever if you look at this crowd.
Yeah, and I experienced that this morning as I was walking through my own neighborhood nearby in Venice. There was a very large protest in Venice down Abbot Kinney Boulevard, and the mood again was downright festive. Everybody was happy to be there. It was so well organized. And LAPD, a lot of motor officers over there, they were participating, not participating, but interacting with the crowd and really kind of enjoying the moment and just standing by just in case they were needed. It wasn't a matter of controlling the crowd. It was just a matter of keeping things orderly and basically just directing traffic. And that seems to be what we're seeing here, but just a much larger scale over here in Hollywood. Again, as I mentioned, if you combine the two crowds on Sunset, now turning on to Orange Drive here, and the crowd over on Hollywood Boulevard, I would estimate we're talking close to 7,000 or 8,000 people here.
Gosh. Well, there seem to be, I don't want to say a funnel of sorts, but are you starting to notice that people are gathering in ideas to where they're going? Because, I mean, we talked with, Carl Schmidt talked to somebody that she didn't know where she was going. She just wanted to be a part of it. But as I'm looking from your shot, it does look like most people are on this street, and then when you pan over to the other group, they're kind of staying on that group. Do you think there seems to be a plan in place to keep moving them?
To answer your question, and to be quite honest, I'm not sure. However, I should also add that the two groups that we're talking about are just two of several other groups in the Hollywood area. So we're probably dealing with about three or four groups total. The other ones, I imagine, are a little bit smaller than this, only from my vantage point. But if you combine all of them, we're talking about just a humongous crowd. So we're talking about more than just these two that hopefully, if all works out well, in fact, I'm looking at another group here. Rob, if you actually know, over here off my front left at about 11 o'clock, just to give you an example, down a few blocks, that's going to be Santa Monica Boulevard. This is a separate group marching down Santa Monica Boulevard, and they are also very peaceful, and I would say at least several hundred strong as they make their way just past of Las Palmas Avenue. So we see these other groups, aside from those two very large ones, ultimately these handful of groups will end up hopefully at the police station.
And to speak to what you're saying, I don't know if we can do this kind of directing from the set, but if you could see the people in downtown Los Angeles, your shot with that many people combined with what we're seeing in downtown Los Angeles, which is just a sea of humanity as well. And then you also remember there's a protest going on in Brea, there's Monrovia, there's Hollywood we've been talking about, and then what we saw in Houston. So the number of people that are away from their home today, showing what they feel and they want to express. You know, we caught up, Chris, we're talking about, 7,000, 8,000 people in Hollywood. And then the thousands of people that are in downtown, there it is. There's the shot there on the left, which you can't see. But just for people to know, it's tens of 20,000 people across the city in the area that are out protesting today.
Not to mention, I understand there's a very large crowd in the South Bay over in Manhattan Beach right now as well. They started during the noon hour, and they are growing over there. It doesn't hurt if you're looking to organize a protest or any large gathering. It doesn't hurt that everybody's off of work. I mean, the city is
There's no
the
traffic
city's come
issue
to
to
a
speak
halt.
of.
We're in the middle of a pandemic. It's worth reminding people that the life has come to a halt in the last several months, and just when it was beginning to wake up and businesses were starting to open up, many businesses have now shut right back down as we deal with these curfews. As you walk through any of our neighborhoods here in the city of Los Angeles, many blocks are basically boarded up completely, and everybody's got the day off of work. So why not come out and make your voice heard? And that's what I think what we're seeing here. When you have so many people that have the free time, I think this is the result.
And Scott, I've been so paying attention to just the actual demonstration that I forgot to see if people are wearing masks. Have you been able to notice anything? I mean, you're far up there, but I'm curious.
Yeah, it's sporadic. I would say we had a lot of mask compliance over the weekend, or whether it's masks or face coverings or what have you. I think as the days have drawn on, I would say maybe a little bit fewer than we were seeing. So that's not the most encouraging thing in terms of the virus. I will say a lot of people are wearing masks, but I think the compliance has been gradually fewer depending on the crowd and depending on the neighborhood. But it's still jarring to see this many people so close together, considering we've been living in a world where we've been avoiding each other at all costs for the last several months. It's been an incredible thing to see over the last several days from my vantage point.
It certainly has. And I meant to say Chris, not Scott. You know that.
Well, you might see a lot of masks, but you don't see 6 feet separating everybody.
No,
certainly, yeah. No, the distance is certainly not there. But some crowds a little bit thinner than others, and they have a little more room and a little less breathing on top of each other. But as you saw over on Sunset and up on Hollywood, I mean, that's how you know it's a lot of people. I mean, you're talking about several city blocks jam-packed. You can't even see the pavement. The asphalt is invisible with this crowd, with those other two crowds. So you're right. Virtually no distance, as a matter of fact. It might as well be Lollapalooza down there.
And the contrast to the left side of your screen in downtown, where everyone is taking a knee right now, and it seems to be a very quiet, peaceful. Well, they got up again. In fact, I looked, turned around, and then they were up again. But
well, I do. They're sitting down. Yeah, they're still either sitting or kneeling. Many of them right now. They're in the street, and it looks like maybe somebody fell off their bike and someone helped pick them up. They're on the Hollywood shot from Chris. So it's remarkable, and I hate to even have forgotten the Manhattan Beach protest, which we saw all of those people walking. So Chris brought that one up, and it is truly amazing. And in Orange County with Tony Cabrera, we saw them in Brea. So there are patches of these protests all over the area. Inland Empire, I'm sure we haven't seen them yet, but likely they are there as well. And at this point, still not one single report of any arrests needing to be made, any damage to any property. And when you think of the remarkable size and the volume of people out today, I think it speaks to what Dr. Howard was saying, that people have had 5 days to start to decompress and understand why they're out there, and the anger element of it has been replaced to a degree with just an understanding of what they're trying to get out. The emotions are less raw. The emotions are still very real.
And the change that has to happen. We're going to check with Tony Cabrera because, as you mentioned, down in Brea, another demonstration happening. And you've been talking to some pretty interesting people, Tony.
I definitely have. It's been a really interesting experience out here in Brea because we're on the corner of Brea and Birch. This is the major intersection in Brea. It's a small town here in Southern California in Orange County, but look across the street. Every corner has a number of people that are out here peacefully protesting. It is emotional. They are speaking the words that they want to get out there, and police, they do have a slight presence as compared to other protests. You can see at the movie theater across the way, there's a few officers there. On the outskirts. You're not going to see them in the middle of all of this. There was a really cool moment just a little bit ago when a huge semi-truck just came by and was honking his horn in support, and everybody cheered. And we're meeting a lot of people here, including Joseph. Joseph is a longtime resident of Brea. And you were talking to me about the Brea bubble. Can you describe that?
So when you talk about the Brea bubble, at least in this city, we tend to be a more conservative city, but conservative doesn't mean we're not willing to listen to others' perspectives. So I think when this went out, people in the community were a little scared about what that means to, burst the Brea bubble, but that wasn't the case at all. People are here peacefully protesting.
Now, I've talked to a few people who said that they're surprised that a protest is happening in Brea instead of like some of the towns that are nearby it, because maybe is it that Brea bubble? Is the bubble bursting in this moment?
I would say that at this moment, people are open and willing to listen to each other, right? Because I think in the end of this, we all got to listen and communicate to each other, and listening is the hardest thing, and I think this is what this community is crying for, is for listening ears.
Yeah, it seems I've talked to a number of people with different opinions, but are here to just support each other despite maybe some differences that you might have?
Absolutely. I think everybody's here in support of each other and understanding each other's perspectives and differences and keeping it peaceful, and I think that's what's most important. That's
awesome. Thank you so much for chatting with me, but we see more and more cars throughout the intersection that are coming by and honking. And there's just a lot. It's growing. It started at 1 o'clock this afternoon, and so I'm going to talk with you. What is your name and where are you from?
I'm Mia, and I'm from Brea. I'm actually from here, yeah.
Okay.
Graduated today.
What's that?
She graduated today.
Graduating today.
Yeah.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
What does it mean then on this special day of graduating to be out here on this corner right now?
I'm just so blessed to be out here with people, to spread love and not hate, to end racism and racial discrimination, to bring equality, because I think that's what needs to be necessary here. And out of all lives matter, Black lives actually matter as well. Just because we're saying Black lives doesn't matter, we're not saying that other lives don't matter. We're saying Black lives matters because that's clearly what's the problem here. Innocent Black lives have been taken away from us, and we're here rooting for them. We want our voices to be heard.
Let me talk to your dad. This is your dad, right?
My dad.
How proud of you, after hearing your daughter right now, are you?
I am very proud. My son goes to Oregon. We had to have a talk with them today. We were going to figure out what to do today, and they were frustrated, arguing with us. So we said, you know what, let's do something about it. Well, that's why we're here. That's what brought us here. My son's a sophomore at Oregon. My daughter just graduated today. She's going to UCR. So, I mean, this is huge. This is huge. And like I'm said, I mean, we're at tears talking about what can we do. And we just so happened to walk out of our door because we've lived here 15 years, and they're down here down Bryan. That's what brought us here. Yeah.
Well, there you go. Thank you so much. And hey, congratulations to you.
Thanks for having me.
Awesome.
Thank you for having me.
Yes. Well, there you go. Just a couple of people right here in Brea, the heart of Brea, and just from different areas of life showing their support. Back to you.
Okay, Tony, thanks much. And it has been very interesting to hear some of the people. He's got a representation of kind of both sides. He's talked to several people who had a different opinion, but for the most part, everybody has been. And how about the high school graduate? What has that young person seen this year?
Exactly.
And and she hasn't looked at it as what has been taken away. Mm-hmm. She looked at, I've got an opportunity to go out and make a difference. And this 2020 class is going to be something special.
I think so too.
Okay, we continue to watch now Chris Christie's shot there in Hollywood as the crowd continues to be on the move. And Chris, I'm going to be, these people tomorrow are going to be exhausted. They have walked because they went one direction, turned around and came back another direction. They've been on the move since 11:30, 12 o'clock today. So people have been walking for 2.5, 3 hours now.
Well, you could tell it's skewing younger because they are moving quick. I mean, when we joined you just a few minutes ago, they were up on Sunset. They've made their way down Orange all the way to Santa Monica. A couple of the groups that we were looking at have now actually already converged. So you're going to get a better sense for the amount of humanity down there in one spot as we go ahead and widen out. You're looking at the intersection of Orange Drive and Lexington. That's going to be Orange Drive up and down through the center of your screen. And as we widen out, you're going to bring Santa Monica Boulevard into the frame here near the bottom of your screen. And as we pan up, or tilt up I should say, just a little bit, you'll see Sunset, the crowd on Sunset. So the entire street from Sunset Boulevard to Santa Monica Boulevard completely packed. If you then take that east a little bit, there's a whole nother group that was coming down from Hollywood Boulevard. The speed at which they're marching is fairly impressive. They're fairly impressive. They're covering quite a bit of ground in a short amount of time. So to answer your question, yeah, they're going to be a little bit teetered out tomorrow for sure.
Yeah, but it's been quite a sight to see that many people gathered and moving so quickly, and perhaps they do have that final destination where they want to all end up together, but that's going to be quite a scene.
Yeah, a little bit of a bottleneck here, definitely some traffic disruption. But one thing we have seen, and some of these cars are certainly part of the protest. Other cars happen upon it occasionally, depending on which turn the crowd makes, but everybody's been very patient. And as we've seen over the last several days, most of these drivers are actually very supportive of what's going on. Most, not all, of course, but most. And we have not seen any major issues when it comes to interaction between the crowds and the cars themselves. And certainly you can see that here in this shot. But the amount of people down there is still really something.
Well, and Chris, you call it no major issues. And it just struck me as you're saying it, and I'm watching the cars stuck in the intersection, just stuck there. How many times in the past have we seen a protest where some of those cars that suddenly got stuck there have bashed in windows or have people pulled from their cars? There's none of that. Yesterday we saw some bashed windows, you know, not off the main street. You'd see a car that had been damaged, you know, slightly or something. You haven't seen any of that. And that's remarkable, Chris, when you just watch people walk by a car and the car just sit there and let everybody walk by them.
Well, you're right. I mean, I think, and that speaks to the adrenaline coming down a little bit, the temperature being mitigated a little bit, and everybody is just being very patient with each other. And certainly we hope that that's what part of this is all about when you think about what we're going through as a society, the pandemic, and now this, what was unrest over the weekend, turning to really peaceful demonstrations. If we can just reset the way we treat each other and the way we talk to each other, maybe driving doesn't have to be as aggressive all the time. Of course, on a normal day, people have places to go. They're in a rush to get somewhere, and if they have a crowd blocking an intersection, and that's going to cause them to be late for work, certainly you can understand why people are a little bit less patient on a normal day. But again, on a day like today, where very few people are out to begin with, traffic is already pretty light. Nobody really has anywhere that urgent to be right now. Let's face it, for the most part, aside from our essential workers who still have to get to work, everybody has a little bit of extra time on their hands, and why not just slow down, let the crowd go by, and again, it's just a part of the unity that we're seeing here in Los Angeles.
I hope you're right, because it does seem that COVID-19 era, we have had to learn more patience and to maybe quiet down a bit, and we're not in a rush to get anywhere, and maybe those cases of road rage will go away, hopefully.
Let's hope. Chris, I saw some people when you zoomed in on that.
I wasn't going to go that far, but
come on.
Hopefully. Let's hope.
When we were looking at the tight shot of that intersection, I saw a few people start pointing the direction of that road right there. So I'm not sure what that intersection is, but people had gathered in this, and I saw several people with both hands almost start trying to direct people down that road. Are they now moving down a road as opposed to just making that block again? What is going that direction?
Some of the crowd that was moving south on Orange has continued down to Santa Monica, and some of them have turned around. So there's a little bit of a concentration at that intersection there. We're pushing in on La Brea, just so you have an idea. That's the West Hollywood perimeter, and that is where LA County Sheriff's Department does have a line set up as folks move through Hollywood. I think they're trying to keep them in Hollywood and not venture into West Hollywood. You can imagine that the Sheriff's Department obviously working in cooperation with the LAPD to make sure this all goes off peacefully. But it does look like some of the crowd has actually turned around and meeting up with other groups within. And at this particular intersection here, we do seem to see a coalescence here of protesters, and some of these cars might be here for a few minutes for this crowd to move through. But certainly, as I mentioned, they're basically just sitting there very patient. And a lot of these cars are indeed part of the demonstration. So we don't see any problems yet. But certainly a lot of people that are moving in different directions. I don't see a lot of traffic direction. Or as much traffic direction as I would have expected to see. Earlier this morning, as I mentioned, I was in Venice, and LAPD was playing a little bit of a bigger part in traffic control and keeping the crowds away from the cars. Unless that's happening out of my purview here, I don't see it, but it could be. But unless that's happening out of my purview, I don't see a lot of traffic direction here. So the crowd does seem to be making up the route as they go along, kind of an ad hoc route, if you will. And we are actually moving away from Hollywood Division, from LAPD's Hollywood Division, which is where they ultimately will end up. That's over at Sunset and Wilcox, just south of Sunset. So eventually they'll be making their way there. Again, we only know that because LAPD has been in communication with several of these organizers, and hopefully as the curfew draws near, we will see that convergence begin.
Okay. All right, well, Chris, we're going to break away real quick and go to Rob Hayes. Is that correct? And he has a development at his location. Rob?
Yeah, Philip, we're at Hollywood and Vine right here, and just about 2 or 3 minutes ago, we just noticed a lot of people running through the intersection. I asked someone what's going on. He said something about shots being fired, but again, that's just from one of the people that was running by here. That doesn't really carry a whole lot of weight. But we're noticing now that, what was the march and the flow of the traffic here has stopped considerably, just came to a stop, and probably about a block down west on Hollywood Boulevard. It looks like there's a group of people in the street no longer marching. And probably about a minute ago, I heard a pop. I don't know what it was. Could have been a firework, could have been anything, but I mean, that's what it sounds like right now. Things have kind of bottled up here, and we're just trying to get a feel for what's going on.
It looks like the majority of that massive crowd has just gone past, and this is like the stragglers, a few at the end, perhaps?
Well, the massive crowd, passed through and probably moved through this area. It had to be about 15 or 20 minutes ago. And then it seemed like maybe the crowd was starting to cycle through again, or maybe it was just another separate part of the marchers. But yeah, from where we are right now, there isn't a whole lot we could see farther down Hollywood Boulevard, just that the marching had stopped in the middle of Hollywood Boulevard. But that's pretty much what we could see from here.
Well, information and misinformation can spread like wildfire with an event this big.
Exactly.
That would be a remarkable turn of events that doesn't really match anything that we've seen if that happens. So let's cross our fingers, hope that is not the case, and we'll just continue to monitor things the way we see them. Rob Hayes had...
Philip, I don't know if you want to take a look now. You'll see a large crowd of people running now.
Sure do. We can see them coming in your direction. And then, of course, all of the people looking at them wondering what's going on as well. And this is when information becomes so scattered and you just don't know what's going on, because there are those, at least in past, that have tried to agitate. Yesterday, there was a man banging a skateboard in an attempt to just make a loud noise. There were fireworks being shot, large fireworks. And now you hear the sirens.
Now we're seeing a large LAPD presence roll onto the scene here with the sirens blaring. There's 1, 2, 3, 4.
You know, we're going to
try. About 10 LAPD cars are rolling onto the scene now.
We're going to try to get Chris Christie's, perhaps he can get an overhead shot for us. Oh, okay, well, maybe he'll make his way over to that area. We're going to find out what's happening there.
Okay, and then now what they're going to do is, if this is something that has developed into a confrontation down the road from where we're looking, police will...
We're seeing water bottles being thrown.
Yeah, police will build a line, and all of those officers. This is exactly what we were talking about when Scott Reif was up. He was saying the footprint is so small, but they're there. Mm-hmm. They are in the neighborhood. They are close. And if there was vandalism, if there was any sort of looting down the street out of our view, they're going to come in and they'll surround that area and try to get control of that situation very quickly.
There you see the officers on the ground there with those non-lethal. I guess those are rubber bullet.
Yeah, now they have the batons out. They'll have either pepper spray or rubber bullets. And Rob, you guys are going to need to be cautious and careful there in your location, because it is a difficult task for authorities as well when they're trying to clear an area with our crew sitting there. So we'll respect what you've got to do for your safety. But that's the first thing we've seen today, and it happened right in front of us, where there became a confrontation and some sort of agitation on that street. Scott, Rob, can you tell us again your intersection? You're Hollywood and Highland?
Hollywood and Vine.
Hollywood and Vine. So it's on Hollywood that's the problem.
Set up right now.
So it's down Hollywood?
Absolutely, yeah. It was further west on Hollywood Boulevard is where something happened, and the crowd had stopped there, and then a few minutes later, as you saw on live TV there, the chunk of that crowd started running eastbound on Hollywood towards us, and that's when the LAPD moved in with what looks like about a dozen squad cars here.
And now taking, they're just in that intersection and I guess they're going to try to address the crowd and get them to go in a certain direction or stop them from going into the intersection. We'll have to see what they're doing. But you see Scott Reif, he's overhead there. I mean, I'm sorry, I keep getting them. Chris Christie.
Yep.
Yes.
All right, Ron, we're coming into view.
Okay, so he's trying to move into the area. What's generally going to happen is what you're seeing right now. They'll muster in that location right there. They will almost give the protesters a chance to clear that area on their own. Then they'll move down about a block, maybe a half a block, and they'll stage there again. And then again, they will tell the people in that intersection, you've got to move. And so then they'll start to get, so Rob, my guess is from where they're going to end up out of your sight here before too long, because they're going to move down that street. So are they just continuing to move away from you?
Yeah, they moved westbound down Hollywood Boulevard. They stopped about, now it looks like there's an even bigger LAPD presence at one street east of where we are. So one street west of Vine Street on Hollywood Boulevard. It looks like there's another pretty large presence of LAPD officers down that way.
Let's go up to Chris Christie. I know that he said, I could hear him saying that he was just about to move into a position. So now he's in Air 7 HD, able to get a better idea of what's going on. Not a better idea. Rob watched it in person right there in front of him. But Chris, you're actually able to see more officers on the move.
Yeah, it looks like LAPD is mobilizing. They seem to be forming a skirmish line or several skirmish lines at Ivar and Hollywood Boulevard, which I think is the intersection that Rob was talking about. You can see them facing actually north. If I'm not mistaken, they're facing north on Ivar Avenue. I'm not sure where Rob is. I know he mentioned that there was some bottle throwing possibly going on down there. If we come down on Hollywood Boulevard, I want to see where those people were. Were they on Hollywood or were they on Ivar? I'm trying to figure it out. I think he was a little bit over towards the west. There they go. Okay, so maybe they're turning them around, pushing them back on. That's going to be Yucca Street, and it looks like a large crowd there, and they are definitely blocking a little more traffic flow. So not sure. It looks like, though, LAPD may be trying to keep them north of Hollywood Boulevard in this shot.
And so had you seen the police presence in this size before, or did you see them come about here in the last few minutes once we saw with, Rob Hayes had somebody tell him as he wrote by that there were some sort of shots fired? Did you see them just immediately mobilize and get back out, or had you seen them in these locations prior to that moment?
They seem to be running from another intersection, and then they ran and formed this group that you see there on the right around the corner of that building there. You can see first the skirmish line, and then the strike teams, and then another skirmish line along the left side of the intersection, and then you see about a dozen motor officers on the other side here. So there seems to be an intent here to at least keep them north of Hollywood Boulevard. I don't know if this is the group that was getting a little more aggressive there or not, but certainly it's not a huge group. And what you notice here in this shot, which is in case anything happens, they want to have more officers in place than agitators. And in this shot here, they certainly are. That crowd is outnumbered by police officers almost. So
well, Chris,
that's just in case things go sideways.
Don't zoom out there. Can we zoom back in? Is that a confrontation between that man and those officers, or is there something else that I'm missing here? Is that a potential arrest in the process, or is he just a protester? But because the demeanor of those officers looks remarkably different than what we've been seeing. They're separated from the group.
Yeah, I don't think they're looking to agitate this crowd or begin declaring any kind of a roundup or anything like that. I think they're just kind of doing a little bit of crowd control and making sure things stay where they are. You don't want to see people running all through these city blocks. That's what happened yesterday. There was some agitators in there, some bottle throwing, and then all of a sudden you start seeing the crowds scatter into the neighborhoods, even into some of the apartment buildings, and you just don't want that. So as long as they can keep everybody orderly in the street and show that force, that's a show of force that we're looking at there. The crowd sees that that's their perimeter, that's where they want to stay north of, and hopefully they will cooperate with those officers. In the meantime, it looks like some of them are indeed turning around maybe and coming back north. So we're looking south, just to give you an idea, we're looking south on Ivar, and on the top part of your screen where those officers are, that's Hollywood Boulevard along the Walk of Fame.
It's also the only opportunity law enforcement has to communicate with the protesters. So that too could have been what it is, where they just walked up and then and just told an individual, you can't come any closer than this location.
Yeah, that could very well be. Let's go ahead and pull out all the way. I want to get an idea for the size of the crowd behind this initial group here. Let's go ahead and tilt north a little bit. Yeah, so they're dealing with a relatively small crowd there, and another crowd right around the corner turning on to or turning off of Cahuenga Boulevard. El Cerrito, Jay, is that what you said? In the city?
Okay.
Right where we, okay, so we do have a report of looting in this vicinity.
Okay. Somebody
in this neighborhood is looting along El Cerrito, so we will try and nail that down. What's the intersection, Jay? El Cerrito and Hollywood.
That makes sense, Chris, because I'll go back to Scott Wright.
El Cerrito north of Hollywood. You're looking at Ivar. Clearly, LAPD now on the move. They've been given the order to advance on this crowd. And by the way, it's not a large crowd, so there's something in this crowd. There's something about these stragglers here that are concerning to the LAPD, and clearly they want to calm the situation down, but they also want to contain that group. It would not surprise me if we see another skirmish line forming on the north side and maybe perhaps blocking or boxing this group in. We're talking about maybe a dozen or maybe a couple of dozen if we tilt down of protesters in this shot here. But again, a lot more officers getting ready to engage with this group. It's not a big group at all. You can see many more police officers than agitators.
This is exactly what happened yesterday. And see, that's what I was curious about. They did talk to some. Okay,
they're pulling somebody out of this car.
That's what
don't know what that. Okay. Don't know what that's all about. What that? I believe it's a woman. What she did there. but they just reached in there, pulled her out for some reason. There's a passenger being ordered out of the vehicle now. She is, looks like these two are going to be detained. And yeah, they just emptied out that pickup truck. Something clearly happened with the driver and passenger of this pickup truck.
Chris, we're going to interrupt you and go to Rob Hayes. Rob, is that tear gas we're seeing being used in that neighborhood?
I don't believe it's tear gas. It looks like it's just some sort of pink firework that was a smoke bomb that was thrown into the crowd here. The officers here have taken control of this intersection. They had shut down the intersection, and someone was setting off fireworks, and then there was that pink smoke bomb that someone threw right in the middle of the officers here. We're moving down. We are now moving eastbound on Hollywood Boulevard. They're trying to clear out some of the protesters to make some room here.
Well, we're sort of...
I'm just going to hold my microphone out here so you can hear what's happening. Looks like they just kind of expanded their area here that they've closed down about half a block now east of Vine on Hollywood Boulevard. Let's see what's going on the other direction.
Well,
I think we could go to Chris Christie in Air 7 HD. He is over the scene there and perhaps has a better vantage point.
Ellen, we've moved over about a half mile from that location over towards La Brea and Hollywood, and it looks like there may be a report of looting on El Cerrito, just north of Hollywood. This is Rob, this is actually La Brea, so El Cerrito is going to be over towards the right. That's that, yeah, right there in the center. Looks like something, maybe tilt up a little bit. Is there any businesses behind that over to the left? Left behind that WeWork building? It looks like an empty street, but maybe the back of some of these businesses might have been penetrated. We're getting reports of looting. The report came in, Philip and Ellen, of some possible looting on El Cerrito, just north of Hollywood Boulevard. So you can see the LAPD airship now circling over this intersection. And if you notice, that El Cerrito place is just a block off of La Brea, where you've got hundreds and hundreds, if not thousands, of protesters moving through. And that is, if indeed that the looting reports are true, that is one of the patterns that we've seen over the last few days. The looters, who are bad actors, and typically, from my experience over the last several days, have nothing to do with the protesters. They drive in from other parts and integrate themselves, infiltrate the protest, and then when police are distracted, they kind of venture off into nearby businesses and try and break in. That may be what we're dealing with here. I don't see any signs yet. Anybody running. The telltale is you see people running out with boxes and all kinds of stuff, but I don't see that just yet. We'll try and nail that down. There is an LAPD presence here, and we do see something that we have seen over the last several minutes, a lot of people bringing water to the marchers and handing out bottles of water, and it looks like that's what we're looking at right here. Again, this intersection, La Brea Avenue and Hollywood Boulevard, a peaceful protest, but reports of looting just about a block away. We'll keep on top of that report for you guys.
All right, Chris Christie, thank you very much for that live report, and thank you everyone for joining us for Eyewitness News at 3 p.m. We've had special coverage, and now we are starting our 3 p.m. newscast. I'm Colleen Sullivan with Ellen Leyva and Philip Palmer.
Copy.
We're all here. We're watching this very large protest, and it's been very peaceful. Just a few moments ago, we did hear some reports of some looting in El Cerrito, just north of Hollywood. But let's go to Eyewitness News reporter Rob Hayes. You're on the ground right there, Rob. Rob Hayes, I'm not sure if you hear us, but
Colleen, yes, I'm sorry. I hear you now. It looks like one of the protesters is trying to confront the police officers right now. They've shut down this stretch of Hollywood Boulevard near Vine, and most of the protesters have stayed back. They're holding their signs, but the one gentleman came up. He's backed off now. Now they are chanting here in the street. Things have cooled off considerably from just a few minutes ago when police cars are streaming through here. There was a smoke bomb that was thrown in the middle of the police group that had formed here. And for now, they're just holding the line here, trying to keep the protesters from moving up Hollywood Boulevard to the west. But I'm trying to hear, yeah, they're just chanting right now, and the police are holding the line.
And Rob, as we watch your pictures, you know, we want to make sure that everyone knows we've been covering this for a few hours now, and it's just been a tremendous amount of people demonstrating, marching, if you will, and this is just a very isolated incident. We're going to go to Chris Christie in Air 7 HD. He's overhead and has, from his perspective, but, you know, Chris, this has been an amazing protest, a huge turnout, and this is just one small incident that's happened this entire day so far. Chris?
Hey there, Ellen. Yeah, it just moved over to Cole Place and Sunset Boulevard. There was a little bit of a confrontation. It looks like it's eased up quite a bit. You see the skirmish line there, and now a number of protesters kneeling in the middle of the intersection. So it is still peaceful here. There is a skirmish line, and I do see that strike team behind them. We are near the police station, and that may be, yeah, that's most likely why that skirmish line is there. They are basically drawing the line as far as how close this mass of protesters will eventually be allowed to get to the LAPD Hollywood Division Station. So we see this is the front head of the protest. There's thousands of people west of this intersection that are making their way eastbound on Sunset Boulevard. But for now, it looks like the front portion of the protest has now taken a knee right there in the middle of the intersection in front of these officers.
Well, one of the things that we're looking at on the left, I believe, or is, where are we seeing the downtown shot? Okay, we're not quite there. It is. One of our other Air 7 shots is that in downtown. So everything that we've been talking about in Hollywood, where people have just been on the move, and there's no telling the miles they've covered since 11:30, and they just walked and walked. Grand Park there in downtown has been a gathering and a rally of sorts where people paused for moments of silence. Carlos Granda was there, and he talked about how they would pause, and he could almost hear the speakers from the back to the front. And it's such a different environment there. All of it has been remarkably peaceful for some 3 hours now, but the volume of people is something that we've talked about over and over throughout the day. And that concentration of people there at Grand Park is remarkably different than what we've seen at Hollywood, in the sense that it's equal in volume, but the people are spread out over miles and various groups throughout Hollywood there. Yeah, they're staying stationary there. I'm not sure if we've seen any of I don't see a huge police presence. Obviously, we know they're there. But what I think that sort of was very interesting that you said, Philip, is that Carlos could hear the speakers in the very back. So you can tell that it's very quiet. Let's go to Eyewitness News reporter Rob Hayes. Rob, you're covering maybe a possible incident there?
I don't know if you can see right now, LAPD is withdrawing a bit from Hollywood Boulevard. They pulled back to the intersection right now, and because they had advanced probably about 5 or 10 minutes ago eastbound on Hollywood Boulevard and moved about half a block down. Now they've moved back to their original position, which is the intersection, Hollywood and Vine. But it seems relatively calm right now. But the protesters have moved forward as the police officers have moved back. But you can see they're trying to form a line here. So yeah, we're going to scoot back a little to get out of the way here.
Part of the difficulty has been freedom of movement all day, and you saw the confrontation there with a person who wanted to go through the intersection, and they're told no. And that has not happened throughout the day. And even you, Rob, it looks like you and your photographer, Jamie, had to move away a little bit.
Which is fine. You know, I mean, we're just trying to stay out of the way and watch as this unfolds. For the most part, 99% of the people who are here are, you know, following the police orders. They're here peacefully. A couple of them, those seem to be confronting some of the police officers, maybe trying to egg them on a little bit, but no one at LAPD is biting. They're standing, they're holding their line, and remaining calm.
left
I think
side.
you were wanting to go to this Sky Map 7,
Yeah.
which is the shot there on the right, and that allows us to see a different location than where
There you
Rob
go.
is. It's Sunset and Cahuenga, and you can see some of the people lying in the street, it looked like. I think
Just
that's
a
Chris
moment ago.
Christie's shot, yeah.
Just a moment ago, they were lying in the street and just doing like a peaceful demonstration there. Now they're on the move again. And these two large crowds eventually will converge. That's the plan, apparently, but we don't know for sure.
This is
when that will
actually the
happen.
group, Ellen, that was actually kneeling a block away. They were kneeling. There was a skirmish line. They were very peaceful in the intersection. Then they got up and they continued the march eastbound on Sunset. That is putting them right in front of the CNN building, where they are, looks like they're making a right actually on Cahuenga Boulevard. So the march has continued on. Again, I think to sum it all up, in the last half hour to an hour or so, we've basically seen these huge groups, each one with thousands of protesters respectively, kind of converging, making up the route as they go along. LAPD basically letting them have almost the entire Hollywood area to make this route up as they go along. When they get to an intersection that they don't want them to cross, that's when you see the skirmish lines. It's not an aggressive move, it's just a tactical move to keep them away from certain areas and give them the freedom to move in other areas. So they're covering a lot of the same ground. They're moving in different directions, at times moving further towards West Hollywood. They made their way down Santa Monica Boulevard, some of them went back up towards Sunset, and they're all kind of moving back over towards the east, which is going to put them eventually closer to Sunset and Wilcox, which is where LAPD's Hollywood division is. They're not going to let them get right up to the station. They're going to keep them back quite a bit, but they're going to allow them to continue the protest as we get closer to curfew right near Hollywood division.
Yeah, just a little under 3 hours left of the curfew. So there's a lot of people to get off the streets in 3 hours.
But it's almost as if they're giving a detour, so they're kind of giving them their route to where they want their final destination. So it seems like when people are trying to figure out which way should we turn, it kind of makes it easy. It's like their own like GPS system to get from one place to the other. Now, of course, we don't know if it's the shortest distance, but yeah, they've been walking for so long. But I think what was amazing to see is that people who are in their homes and then they hear the crowd. We saw Carl Schmidt earlier. You just heard the crowd. You're in front of your home, and you think, you know what? Why not? Let's all stand in solidarity and keep on moving. And I think that's why it's had a very, peaceful, uplifting sort of mood. And, again, we've seen a lot of people out. A lot of people in all various communities are coming out and showing their support for this situation. And they want to focus on protesting against police brutality. And they've been doing it in a peaceful way.
And Carl spoke with a woman who said, yeah, she was just in her house. She heard the noise, so she decided to join them, just started walking with them. And left-hand side of the screen, again, that's Grand Park. And apparently they've been kind of gathering at Grand Park, and then they take a little circular route around Civic Center, and then they get back to the park. So apparently they've been doing that several times. Some splinter groups will just do a little circular march around Civic Center, get back to the park. And that's how they're making their voices heard there.
Yeah, and again, we have Air 7 HD is live over the scene of downtown LA, where Grand Park, you can see a very large group of people there. You can see just a volume of people, very peaceful. It is still, we are in a pandemic. It is fair to say that most of us have been trying to practice social distancing, but it is incredible because times have changed since March, where it is interesting to see people so close together.
I'm not sure if you guys can see, I don't know if we can get the shot up from Rob Hayes' camera, and you see an officer and a woman talking, and at one moment, it's a pleasant, she started smiling, and clearly he's trying to communicate to her, but there are so many people out there who are just trying to get information in many cases. Where can we walk? We've talked about they've been walking for 3.5 hours or so, but they don't know where to go, and this is the communication that you hope for. I think Rob might be ready to say something. What are you hearing, Rob?
Check this out. I mean, now this is just a good example of the protesters and LAPD working together here. And you saw the one woman, she seemed to be an organizer with the protest. She was talking with one of the commanders on the scene here. They were talking, they were laughing. They were having a good conversation, and they're trying to keep things peaceful. And yeah, I'm gonna. All right, she's asking someone in the crowd is playing really loud music, and she's asking them to turn that down. But you could tell the protesters and LAPD here are just trying to diffuse this situation that suddenly sprung up among hours of very peaceful protests with tens of thousands of people. Probably about a half hour ago, something just went south, something small, and it seemed like LAPD capped it off pretty quickly, and now they're trying to work together to try and make this work, it sounds like.
Yeah, it appears like she is the leader of this particular segment of the group, and maybe they're trying to figure out what street they're going to go to next. If we could hear her, perhaps.
Yeah, I hear her saying, if you're not good with this, go home.
Oh, she's cute. She's put her arm around him and said, oh, sorry.
That's adorable.
But that has been the mood for the last couple of days. And again, it's changed since the weekend. Oh, Rob's got his microphone here.
Somehow we got separated. Cool, we're going to be able to get back together. However, Officer Figueroa and I have agreed that we're not with the bullshit today. We with the shits today, that equal rights. We love shits today.
Okay, live television will say that basically they've told them they can get together, but they have to maintain. Here's the editing. You can get together, but you have to behave. They're not going to put up with certain things today.
And we apologize if you hear some offensive language or see a sign, but that's just the nature of this breaking news. But she's definitely rallying the crowd.
And they respect her. She says, turn that music down, and they turned it down. And
one at a time. He's letting us get together. One at a time.
It's very clear.
Yes.
They're going to let the group get back together, but they're going to do it one at a time.
Okay. Well, and we have seen another element. You see great cooperation there. We've also seen, you saw our live camera down in Hollywood.
Look at them. I love that.
There you go.
They made friends.
Yeah, she's great.
You saw National Guard troops outside the Kodak Theater. Oh, wait.
Oh, we'd love to hear that.
My name is Five, so that's even more better. Even more better.
Tell me your
I can't believe we
message.
just
What were
said
you
that
just telling the people?
Oh, we got to get out the way.
Oh, where'd she go?
We have to get out of the way, she says. We have to.
It's a little hectic here.
Yeah, it's all right. It's power in numbers today. We want unity today. Somehow, together. Officer Figueroa Carlos said we could stand right here. So, power in numbers is what it is for today. We got separated with their tactics. I understand that. I don't want that. We don't want to do anything that's not peaceful. We've been peaceful all day. And if you think about it, literally no one's been getting hurt in these riots. We're fucking up white man's money. You can bleep that out if you want to. That's on you. Okay, that's on you. We're not touching each other. We're loving each other. And that's a problem for some people, but not us today. And they're going to let us be together. Look it. Carlos did it. Carlos did it. All right.
All right, big fan of Carlos there. So.
Well, sorry about that, Rob.
Yeah, sorry about the language, but she has a really good message that she's trying to pass along right here, and that is they want their peaceful march, and they've been doing really well. LAPD is working with them right now, and it's just a matter of trying to logistically make this work. If you take a look off to the right here, you can see some of the crowd that was cut off from the main march is now, calmly and not one by one, but at least working along the sidewalk here and meeting back up with the main crowd. So LAPD is trying to make this work, and it sounds like the protesters are doing the same.
It seems like the law enforcement is facilitating the march, and helping them out and trying to get them, to stay cohesive and organized. And so it's been good to see that today.
Yeah, and also, I think we saw yesterday with Chief Michael Moore, he said, they are trying to change their practices. They're trying to work with the community, and everyone is trying to, they want to make change. So, and they said they have been implementing lots of different protocols to implement it within the department.
We're looking at the shot there on your left is a National Guard, a couple of National Guardsmen talking with some protesters, and some of the protesters are being a little confrontational. I believe that's Chris Christie's camera. And you know, Chris, we saw on Sunset National Guard troops outside the Kodak Theater, and now we're seeing a couple of more here. What are you seeing as far as their role in this at this point?
This appears to be a pretty friendly interaction, I believe. We were looking here over at Sunset and Vine, which is where they were kind of staging. This is on the other side. They seem to be so that's the east side of the Cinerama, the ArcLight Cinemas here in Hollywood, and then you're looking at the west side as we tilt down, where they appear to be having a conversation with some of the protesters. Obviously, very unclear what's going on down there, what they're saying. Looks fairly friendly, but maybe a little bit of animation. Just hard to tell sometimes from this high up, but you can see some clapping. That's always a good sign. And this is one of the few times that we've seen the National Guard really interacting, at least in our area, with the crowd. You know, over the weekend, it was a very different posture for the National Guard when they were finally put in place and deployed to Santa Monica and other places. It was a much more defensive tone. Now you see them actually in a position where they can actually socialize and have some interaction with the crowd. And obviously, like I said, that round of applause is always a good sign. But I do get the impression, as we widen out between this group here and the group of National Guardsmen on the other side, again on the east side, that's going to be Sunset and Vine. Right there is Sunset and Vine. You can see they do have a line set up, peaceful protesters sitting in the crosswalk there. It just appears that they are trying to prevent the crowd from going west of Vine, which would put them in front of the famous Cinerama Dome. You can see somebody standing on a car there taking pictures. What's interesting about this shot, car traffic is getting through here, albeit with some disruption, but for the most part, the crowd seems to be intentionally trying to stay out of the way of traffic. In fact, a little while ago, almost the entire group that you see there was practically on the sidewalk. Now there's a little more volume on the intersection, and here once again comes another group that we were talking about earlier. They appear to be meeting up with this group here. This is all happening on Vine Street that you're looking at in this shot, guys.
Yeah, there are several different groups that are all trying to link up together today in this very large show of unity. I know we heard in Rob Hayes' live report, she was saying we want unity and we want it in powers and numbers, and they want to stay peaceful. Let's go to another very large gathering in downtown LA. That is where Carlos Grande is. Carlos?
Well, we're outside of City Hall. We're in Grand Park, and you can see the crowd of people behind me. Now, the crowd has not been static. They were here, then they moved and started marching through downtown Los Angeles, ended up here again. Then they all moved to the LAPD headquarters. They were there for a while, and then they moved back here. So, again, it's thousands of people. You can see it out there. And I cannot stress enough, very peaceful. There have been no problems that we can see here. They're giving their message. They're on the steps of City Hall, and you can see in the background LAPD protecting City Hall, putting barricades up. But again, the people here just want to give their message. They want to tell the world what they're feeling, and that is it. So far, we have not seen any problems, any kind of violence or anything like that. It's been a very quiet day here in downtown Los Angeles. So it's been a positive message. And I'm trying to see if I can speak to someone. Sir, can I ask you a quick question? We're live on TV right now,
Okay.
Channel 7.
How you doing?
Why did you want to come here? What are your thoughts?
Well, I was debating coming here, but I know that I have a part to play in this big scheme, and I really want to see change, so that's why I'm basically here. I hope to see police brutality decrease. I hope to see racism abolished, and it's just sad that we had to come to this, but this is America, and this is how we make change. So thank you for giving me an opportunity to speak, man.
It's been a very positive day. I have not seen any violence. It's been peaceful. I mean, this is the message that you and others want to give.
Yes, of course. I wanted to witness myself instead of just looking on social media and media outlets to see if it is peaceful or if I would witness a riot. But all I'm seeing is people cheering, being together. It's just unity, and we're all standing for one thing. I just hope we get more organized to really get the change and pull through on this.
I guess you had seen on social media the people that are not part of this, the looters, and was that something that was a concern to you?
Yeah, it was a real concern. I was willing to come out here and do my part to stop people looting, to refrain for that narrative, you know? It's really important that we keep it peaceful because the numbers is what we need. So if we have people afraid to come out here and protest, that is the opposite of what we're trying to accomplish here, you know? So I was one of those guys that were afraid, but now I'm not afraid, and I should be coming here more days now, yeah.
Thank you so much. It's a very positive. What's your name, sir?
My name is Kashif.
And your last name?
I'm not going to give my last name. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Very kind. So you can see that is the message that people here are trying to give. You heard him say he was concerned coming here. He had seen what had happened over the weekend, Monday, in some places. Again, some people that were taking advantage of the situation to loot or to possibly cause trouble. But again, as we're seeing here, very peaceful. He came here because he wanted to see it for himself, and he saw it, and he sees that it's peaceful. But again, yes, some of the things that had been happening were concerning to him, I'm sure concerning to many others. Maybe that's why the crowds are so big today, because they finally said, look, I want to get out there, I want to see if this is really what's happening, want to see what's happening. And they do want to come out to see that it is peaceful. And that is the message that everyone here apparently is trying to say today. Back to you guys.
What a wonderful message. Carlos, thank you. And I like that elbow bump.
Yeah.
Let's go back to Chris Christie. He's been over the Hollywood scene where so many people are gathered. And that's a new sign. We haven't seen that one earlier.
Yeah, this is two of those groups now converging and growing rapidly, actually, at Vine Street and Sunset Boulevard. This is where the National Guard is keeping the crowd just to the east of Vine, and that crowd is clearly growing. As you mentioned, Colleen, I think that is certainly true. A lot of people are seeing what's going on and coming out, especially people that live in the neighborhood here, joining in. It's got a viral effect, especially when these start to take on more of a festive atmosphere. It's almost like a parade at some point. So you think about the parades that we've missed in the last few months because of the coronavirus. Well, this is kind of reminding me of that at times, especially when we see these really large groups in caravans of cars moving through the streets here in unison. You heard that gentleman talking about the feeling of unity down there. It certainly seems to be present from my view up here. We are seeing so many people, such a large volume of people, and so many different groups of them across the Hollywood area and across the city of Los Angeles this afternoon. And in this case, a big group right here. We're even seeing it online. You know, we're seeing that virtual Blackout Tuesday that's taking place on social media, on Facebook and on Instagram. Everybody showing unity and solidarity by posting the black images, the solid black images on their Instagram feed, and kind of taking a day off from posting to take a moment and unite with one another and think about the reason that everybody's coming together today and observing the conversation that we are all about to have. This is going to spark so many conversations that I think it's hard to wrap your head around the things that could be in store, the change that could be in store that this has triggered. We don't know yet what that change is going to be, what it's going to look like, but it's almost impossible to imagine a nation going through a moment like this without significant change.
Think of George Floyd's family and how they're seeing this in Los Angeles. Houston is like 20,000 strong right now in his hometown. And in Paris, France, I just saw that there's thousands of people in Paris, France right now paying homage to George Floyd and then somebody who died in French police custody in 2016. So it must be really encouraging for them because perhaps something good, something change will finally happen because of all this. And the anger that it has erupted because of this is leading to something good.
Well, they said their brother was a gentle giant, and he was all about spreading positive energy, and so it's good that they came out and talked about their brother because we've just been seeing that video that is so unsettling for many of us to watch, but to hear his family saying he was a big brother, he was a child, he was someone's little one, and he really was all about peace. It's good to see people getting out and just showing that they want to see change. All right, and we're going to continue. We have our reporters out everywhere. Let's go to Sid Garcia. Sid, you're in Monrovia at another peaceful protest.
We've got a couple of hundred people out here. This started about an hour ago. Let me step out of the way here. You've got a couple hundred people here in Old Town Monrovia. And the goal here is to protest, and they're doing it peacefully. They've marched up and down Myrtle Avenue. And we had a chance to talk to some of the organizers, including a concerned business owner. Here's the deal. They don't want the criminal element here. They want their message to be sent peacefully. They're loud, they're peaceful, they're organized. Take a listen. Here's what some of them had to say earlier.
We need to do this out here today because I live out here and it's not, how do you say, aware. People are not aware of what's going on, and they are, but they don't see it as it could be peaceful, and we have done it peacefully, and we could continue to be peaceful and bring awareness of Black Lives Do Matter.
This has always been a peaceful town. My concern is with the coverage that this is getting, that the looters will come to this town. That is my concern.
We are forced to take a stand. If you're in a car and you want to move, you can't stay in neutral. You got to go drive or you're going to do reverse. You're going to do either or. So I'm really impressed with the young people and the diversity of the marchers.
And that's what you see here. It's a peaceful rally. Right now they're chanting, "We can't breathe." But as they've marched up and down the street, Monrovia PD is keeping an eye on things. But it's been a very peaceful, well-organized rally. And that's what the organizers want. Live in Monrovia, I'm Sid Garcia, ABC 7 Eyewitness News.
Okay, Sid, thank you very much. Right now we're going to go back to Air 7. Chris Christie over the scene in Hollywood. Chris.
Yeah, Sunset and Argyle now as this very large group, upwards of a couple thousand between Argyle and Points West, where they are kind of interacting with traffic. It's causing a little bit of disruption because there was a bunch of cars going in the westbound direction, and there was just no way they were going to get through. So we saw a few cars actually making U-turns through the crowd, which is always concerning. Anytime you see the crowd getting too close to the traffic, it just it grabs your attention because you don't want to see any accidents. So fortunately, it looks like they've been managing to stay a little bit closer to the right, let that traffic get through there, and the march continues now westbound on Sunset for this particular group. Again, if you're joining us, we're talking about several groups scattered throughout the Hollywood area, several thousand strong, each of them upwards of about 8,000 to 10,000 all together by my estimation from up here in Air 7 HD. An incredibly peaceful march. We've had very few incidents. We did see one couple detained a little bit earlier, but certainly nothing really to write home about. It's been a largely unifying experience, and it looks like a pretty joyous experience for the most part down there, at least from our perch up here in Air 7 HD, guys.
It does seem very, a lot of people are looking like they're having fun out there, of course, for a very big cause. As we approach 3:30 p.m. with two major demonstrations happening right now in Hollywood and in downtown Los Angeles, we are going to stay on the air. World News Tonight will air on channel 7.2. All right, now we're going to go to Eyewitness News reporter Rob Hayes. Rob, you are live in Hollywood, where you are in with a sea of protesters right there.
Yeah, Hollywood and Vine right now, very calm. Big change from, say, 45 minutes ago when things got a little heated. But you can see this is a woman we spoke with live on air a short time ago. She's now on someone's back, communicating to the crowd as well. I'm going to walk up and see if I can hear what she's saying.
I need bail and jail. So please chill. They're going to move. They're going to move, and then we're going to move.
All right, well, she's...
We got shot at because they got 3 young, unarmed black men in the alley. So we were peacefully protesting. We walked to the alley like, hey, what's going on? The officer said, we think they're looting, and then they started shooting into our fucking crowd. Nope. We were peacefully protesting. They apprehended 3
Sorry.
Poor Rob. You know, Rob, it's not on you. We know it, live television. Sorry about some of that language that we heard, but always.
You know what? It does show the raw emotion. We've talked about the peaceful nature, and we tried to use this and make this line earlier. It's better to say nonviolent because there are still emotions. There is still very real, raw anger. Even as it has pulled back from its earliest stages, people are beginning, as Dr. Howard talked about earlier, to process what they want to accomplish, what they want to see. And that's what law enforcement is dealing with. They are very upfront about their feelings, and it's been remarkable on both sides, the restraint being shown, that they're able to let those emotions out, and it doesn't lead to anything else.
Yeah. Yeah.
Let's go up to Air 7 HD. Chris Christie is there. And Chris, sometimes you're able to see a better picture, but you're not able to feel the emotion that is down there on the ground.
You know, it's interesting. There's kind of a spectrum of emotion, and you can tell just based on the body language. You can have one block and one group having a confrontation with police and a lot of screaming and chanting, and it looks a little more, you know, a little more animated. And then a block away, you might see somebody with music playing and people taking on more of a dancing feel in the middle of the intersection. And then you have another intersection where you have almost looks like, I can't speak from up here, but you have everybody kneeling in the middle, and it looks so quiet, at least from up here, it almost looks like a moment of silence at times where they're just respecting the law enforcement that's blocking the intersection, and they just take a knee and let their voices be heard. They have signs that, you know, again, it's a spectrum of messages, a spectrum of emotion, and you can kind of grasp it a little bit. Of course, it's nothing like being down there in the middle of it all, but when you get that bird's eye view and you see the different profiles of different groups of demonstrators, it's kind of interesting. It really does span the gamut.
Absolutely, Chris. You're absolutely right. We are going to go to one of our other Eyewitness News reporters, Tony Cabrera. Tony, you are in BREA. How's everything where you are?
I can't breathe! Colleen, the BREA protest has moved a couple blocks down. We're now at Imperial and BREA Boulevard. They have moved away from that main intersection that they were at, and they marched down Imperial towards BREA Mall, and then flipped a U-turn, came back this way. And they're on each corner of the intersection, and I want to grab these women here who are from BREA. Tell me about the emotions going through you right now.
I just can't believe the community right now. Everyone's coming together for such a big movement, and I'm at loss for words. I didn't plan on coming out until I saw everyone lined up when I came home from work today, and I'm in it for the long run. I'm going to go to every single protest that I can until there's change to be made.
Who are you here with?
I'm here with my best friend Tiffany, my sister Chandre, and my other best friend Samaya, and my cousins are across the street. We're all here together. I mean,
family and friends.
Family and friends. New acquaintances, new friends.
Okay.
This is the community to be in.
Let me see your sign saying Black Lives Matter, I can't breathe. Tell me about your emotions going into this today and why it's so important to let these drivers that are passing you by hear your message.
Because I have black brothers. I have nephews that are black. And I'm over this. I'm over the racism that the police do, and we let them go because they have badges. They call us thugs because we're protesting. What about the thugs that are wearing badges? I have a heart condition. I was afraid to come out because of COVID. But I'd rather come out and fight for my brother's lives than fucking stay at the house. Sorry, I'm sorry to say that. But enough is enough. We need to fight for our lives. I don't care if you're sick. I don't care if you're old. Come out, protest, because they're going to kill us either way.
Well, there we go. You were seeing those strong emotions at this non-violent protest with the police blocks away, just keeping an eye on it from a distance. Live in BREA, Tony Cabrera, ABC 7 Eyewitness News.
All right, Tony, thank you very much. Right now, I believe we're going to go back to Rob Hayes, who's been there on the ground. And Rob, how's it going there?
All right, Hollywood and Vine, the police just cleared the intersection. They've moved out, and they are now letting the protesters continue on. They're moving south on Vine. I know we were saying there's another group that's to the south on Sunset somewhere, so I believe they may be trying to kind of hook up with the rest of the march. But there's probably about a rough estimate, 1,000 to 2,000 people who were kind of bottlenecked here once they shut down this intersection because of what was going on a little further to the east on Hollywood Boulevard. But they've opened up the intersection, and it looks like the crowd is moving south on Vine right now.
All right, Rob, sorry, we're all switching out our microphones up here on the desk. So it still looks very peaceful where you are. They're sort of, is it one group that's now converging with another, or is it still the same one trying to get together?
I kind of get the feeling that this group got cut off from the larger group. Somehow they may have been lagging, and then when all this whatever happened down the street happened and this got shut down, they kind of bottlenecked up here. But they are moving peacefully. As we've been watching all afternoon, most of the crowd here has been very peaceful. In fact, they had one of the protest organizers was working with LAPD to make this happen.
All right, Rob, thank you very much for that. We're going to go up to Air 7 HD. We're going to go back to Chris Christie. You're live overhead, Chris. Obviously, it's going to be quiet in the helicopter, but a lot of people, you're on something else.
Yeah, it looks like somebody was caught possibly looting. It was a report of looting, and it looks like they are taking somebody into custody, but it does appear to be a very isolated incident, and they have a couple of National Guardsmen now keeping the crowd back. Lots of folks just want to take pictures. They see the commotion. There was a worry about some of the officers, but everybody's been accounted for. LAPD's okay, and now they're just going to ask the crowd to back off. This is at Sunset Boulevard and Ivar Avenue, by the way, but it does look like this situation has been resolved. Just a small crowd, a little bit of commotion, a lot of people running over to try and just grab a quick picture. That looks like that's all this is about, guys.
All right, well, that's good to see. Yeah, it is. We've been seeing thousands and thousands of people. So, of course, every now and then there is going to be someone who splinters off or has their own agenda. But joining me now, David Ono, during this half hour of news before Eyewitness News at 4 o'clock. So, David, we've been seeing thousands and thousands of people marching very peacefully in Hollywood and in downtown Los Angeles. They're sort of all going to be merging in Hollywood. There's several different groups with thousands of people marching through the streets.
It's an encouraging day, Colleen. Mm-hmm. Every day it seems to have a different personality, and we've been watching the protests going on today, and I feel like there's a lot more legitimacy on what we're seeing and trying to get a message out there, which is, I think it's an evolutionary process between the people who are protesting legitimately and the communication with the police department, and each one kind of their goals evolving and having a better understanding and how to pull this off and pull it up properly for the greater good, as opposed to the other incidents that we have been watching take place for the last few days. I would say markedly different. I think Saturday might have been the worst we saw in Fairfax. Sunday was Santa Monica. Monday, though, I could tell a pretty big difference on the attitudes of both the police and the protesters, and today, significant difference, all for the better. Here we are going through much of Southern California. We've been showing you scenes from Orange County to Hollywood to San Bernardino, and you could sense the peacefulness and the message that's being sent out, and also you get a sense of satisfaction for the protesters because they are being respected and given free rein, not free rein, but given space to do what they want to do and do what is their right as Americans, and that is to speak out, but speak out peacefully.
Absolutely, David, you're right there. And speaking of sort of people getting along and making sure their voices are heard, it's happening right now in Grand Park. And Carlos Granda, you're there live right now.
Yes, and we're on Broadway. This is one part of Grand Park. Let's walk over here so we can show you. When we go over here, you can see all the people that are in Grand Park right there, and right across the street over there, you can see that City Hall and the LAPD there, and the thousands of people here in Grand Park. But again, very peaceful. You can see that they're sitting, some are dancing, others standing, just talking. A couple of people with megaphones out there. Be careful with that. You don't want to show that. But anyway, the people with megaphones giving their messages. We just didn't want to show some profanity. But again, very calm, very peaceful protest. We spoke to a gentleman a little while ago, and we've been speaking to people all day who say they just want their message out. Their message that they want to get out is that they want the violence to stop. They believe Black Lives Matter, and that is the message they want. They're outraged at what happened to George Floyd, and they want to get that message out. The gentleman I spoke with said that he was actually a little concerned about coming here because he had seen on social media some of the things that had been happening, and he realized that, and he wanted to see for himself what was happening. And he said he saw that this was peaceful, and this is what he wanted to see. On social media, there have been, of course, and on all media, that there's some people that were trying to take advantage of the situation, some people trying to loot, others trying to infiltrate and cause trouble. But that's not what we're seeing here today in Grant Park. What we're seeing here is a very calm, peaceful protest. They've been here at City Hall for a while. They moved over to LAPD, which is just across the street, and then they moved back here. And this is what they've been doing throughout the day, just sitting here, making their message known to people in City Hall, to the LAPD, that they want things to change. But again, a very positive, peaceful message today. Reporting live, I'm Carlos Granda. Back to you.
Happy to see it, Carlos, and thank you for that report. Carlos, we'll continue to watch the situation. There are a tremendous amount of people there in Grant Park, and a much smaller display here. This is Manhattan Beach, Colleen, and we just want to show you there's nothing bad going on here either. This is just a display of a few protesters in the community of Manhattan Beach. But as you said, you saw earlier, there is some boarding up.
Around noon today, I actually came down there. My son, who's 9, heard about this happening near the Manhattan Beach Pier, and he's like, "Can we go?" And I said, "Well, we'll go right before I head to work." So we did drive down to this area. You can see right there a lot of plywood being put up in front of the businesses. They just sort of started putting them up. I saw them putting them up in front of Starbucks. So a lot of businesses making some efforts to possibly protect their businesses. But we saw the police down there sort of putting some barricades up. It was just sort of starting, but there was a much larger crowd than this. I'd say maybe 4 times as many at least. But they did start marching. So I know that it was a very gentle sort of gathering. People, again, making their voices heard. I know kids want to go out and experience this as well. So, and there was, you know, this is a little coastal community where it has a very much a sense of community, and everybody wanted to go out and at least make sure that they made their voice heard. This is the way it's supposed to work, Colleen. All the communities, they want some representation. They want to know that people are out there delivering the message, and that's what's taking place in Manhattan Beach. Peacefully, yes, there is some boarding up as a precaution, but you want all the shop owners to be happy that it was ultimately unnecessary. So, but we will, you never know, and so they're being cautious. We're going to continue to watch the situation, very peaceful in Manhattan Beach. Let's take you back to Hollywood, though. We're about sunset, and I guess Ivar, that's where Chris Christie has been watching, and this crowd, they're on the move, and are they taking a left there, Chris?
It looks like they're converging here. That says this is a part of a large group on Sunset Boulevard near Cahuenga, and thousands can, it looks like they are. They're making that northbound turn, Unfortunately, I'm going to have to let you guys go. We have to pull out of here. I'm going to send it back to you guys, but I can tell you, you're looking on the top of your screen. That's going to be Sunset and Vine, where they're keeping the two crowds separated for now on either side of the Cinerama Dome. Guys?
Get going, so take care of whatever you need to take care of, Chris. That last little glimpse that Air 7 showed us right there was the National Guard at Sunset and Vine, and that was a tremendous amount of people over there kind of lined up against the National Guard. It is still peaceful, but it is a large body of people, both protesters and the support for the National Guard that is set up, and they also have their Humvees there, which is quite a sight there at a very important intersection here for Southern California, where many tourists go, Sunset and Vine, and that's exactly where that was, where Chris was showing us those images. He's going to have to take care of a situation. In the meantime, we're back to a live situation here. Those live pictures from Manhattan Beach, a peaceful showing of a few protesters there. And you, of course, saw a little while ago, just downtown Los Angeles, an enormous amount of protesters. So we're just trying to give you a glimpse of all the different situations and all the different places where people have shown up to basically protest and deliver their message. So, Ron, our question to our producer, are you telling me to move on to this right here? Okay, so here we go. We want to deliver this message right
from
here.
ABC 7. This is an Eyewitness News update.
All right, a disturbing arrest overnight. An armed man was taken into custody, allegedly posing as a member of the National Guard. Law enforcement sources tell us that this is a suspect. He is 31-year-old Gregory Wong. And those sources say that he took an Uber to downtown LA, geared up in National Guard attire with an assault rifle. He then fell into formation with real National Guard troops, and some of those troops noticed him and called LAPD officers over. The arrest was made about 1:30 this morning, and sources tell us Wong is a former guardsman, and he wanted to join in the fun. The rifle was a ghost gun, a homemade weapon without a serial number. Wong is currently being held on $50,000 bond. An interesting story here, but we want to point out nothing terrible happened, but it is a curious situation where somebody wanted to integrate himself within the National Guard.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, something to be a little concerned about for sure. And we also have a follow-up right now on a very poignant moment our cameras captured yesterday. Surrounded by protesters on Sunset Boulevard, which is what happened when an LAPD commander chose to take a knee.
If I take a kneel with you guys, will you give me your verbal acknowledgement that this is a peaceful matter? I will be a model. Take a knee. Take a knee. Take a knee. Everybody down. We stand together. And kneel together. Okay, thank you. So within the next 30 to 40 minutes, if you peacefully go about returning back to where you came from with the same honor you came here, I will give you my commitment and honor that you will not see police officers in front of you. Fair enough?
All right, and you saw that Commander Corey Polka taking the knee right there with so many people. And again, we need to tell you, both sides did keep their promise. Most protesters left before curfew, and we were able to talk to Commander Polka today about why he chose to do that.
It was just an opportunity for me to speak on behalf of the LAPD, to speak on behalf of the community and the people I know, and just to remind everybody that, you know, we are in this together. And though we wear uniforms and we may be across skirmish lines, that behind this badge is a working heart, an empathetic heart, an understanding heart, and human beings who have families, who care about our community, who care about our city, and who want to serve. And that was my intent, to deliver the message, to break bread, to put my hand out and establish peace in hopes that it would be an expression of freedom of speech and an opportunity to show their frustration and their anger as protected by the Constitution.
And one note about that officer, Commander Corey Polka, he survived coronavirus and has donated his plasma to help others. I think so many of us saw that image yesterday. It was very moving.
And we actually showed that, the very tail end of that live on Eyewitness News at 4 o'clock. And Veronica Miracle, of course, shot that from her camera, her cell phone, put it out on social media, and people loved it. It went everywhere. And I think it's a loud statement to what people actually want to see when it comes to this era that we're going through. And that is, it's the simple things like your willingness to talk, you know, between the police department and the protesters. And that little thing, that little gesture makes a world of a difference. And they want that to go out there, and people liked it, and they continue to share it. And then we're seeing it in cities all across America right now. So that's what I mean about an evolution of this process that we are starting to notice as each day goes by, a little bit more of a cooperation and an ability for the two sides to come together and say, let's make a common goal here. And Commander Polka was wonderful, a true leader in our community. Yes. And he's had a heck of a few months there dealing with the coronavirus, but now getting a lot of love for what he did there, which means so much.
Absolutely, but we have spoke about this for the last few days. You know, George Floyd was murdered on just over a week ago, and so many law enforcement officials have come out saying that it was appalling for them to see. They welcome these peaceful protests. They want change. They want to be part of the change as well. They certainly did not align themselves with what they saw in Minneapolis.
From the start, you and I talked about that as we started to see these protests arise at the middle of last week, and we did want to make that point, that there are many law enforcement officers out there that are as equally repulsed by the images as the community is. They disagree with that as well. They say that was wrong as well. And so we have to understand that as we go forward, that this is, you know, the country as a whole is really angry over the situation, even law enforcement officers.
Absolutely. And, you know, speaking about everyone kind of getting out today, showing a big unity in numbers, talking about the change they want to see, talking about respect for everybody. And, you know, it's been a large volume of people have been coming out. It has been very peaceful, a lot of fun, a lot of music, a lot of clapping, a lot of chanting. So people are, they're just getting out. They want to make sure their voices are heard. They are nonviolent, trying to just be optimistic and kind of just show their solidarity against any sort of police brutality. And they really are making a message today.
Right. Okay, so 3:51 right now. Keep in mind that curfew is coming, and that's when things change. So let's hope. We saw an example from LAPD yesterday. They started to arrest people after the curfew. So you know what the rules are. Let's see if the public abides by them. Let's go now to BREA. Tony Cabrera is watching some protesters where he is in Orange County. Hey, Tony.
Hey, David. Yeah, we are on the corner of Imperial and Brea Boulevard right now. This is one of the major intersections in town. This is a fairly small town. Look across the street there and you can see that's one of the major groups here. But as the lights turn green, they start to march around it. And so it's really cool to kind of see the different groups of people that are here. It's a diverse group of people. We've heard a number of different opinions, but I'm going to talk to this gentleman first. You know, you're from this area of Orange County. Why was it so important for you to be out here and to hold this sign?
Well, I feel like it's a very conservative town. Like when Obama was elected, we had Obama signs in front of our house that got stolen several times. So I just think it's really important to come out and show our support. And I'm really impressed with our community that so many people come out, and as you're standing here, you hear all the cars honk, and it's great to see this kind of support.
Yeah, some people were saying they were shocked that this would be happening in Brea, that a protest of this size would be happening here. You know, are you under that impression as well?
Absolutely. It was supposed to be over at 2:30, and I don't think it's going to be over anytime soon.
Yeah,
it's really impressive.
Well, thank you so much for chatting. I'm gonna move over and talk to someone else here. What is your name and where are you from?
My name's Erin Petrie. I'm from Brea, California.
Okay. So silence equals compliance. That's a message that we've seen, but what does that mean to you, this sign?
To me, that means if you're not out here protesting, if you're not making monetary donations, if you're not advocating for Black Lives Matter, you're being complicit and you're not on our side. There's no in the middle about this situation. You're either for this movement or you're against it. There's no argument, this is not a matter of opinion, this is about racism. So yeah.
Now, to look across to each corner of this intersection, to see the diversity that is here, you know, how does that make you feel?
I think that's crucial, and I think that as a minority and looking at other minority groups, I feel like it's my job and like I feel responsible to advocate for other groups that can't advocate for themselves.
Yeah. Thank you so much. As we see just different generations, different ethnic backgrounds, so many different people that are out here. I'd like to talk to this group of people here. You know, no justice, no peace, BLM. You know, to look around and see all these other signs, you know, what is this meaning to you in this moment in history?
We are standing up for what everybody has been trying to fight for many years. And it's sad that Black people continuously have to be hurt, murdered. Their families are sick and tired of this. There needs to be a stop to it. We all want peace. We all want to have the same solidarity, and this is what we're here for. This is for George Floyd. This is for every Mexican, every Latina, every Black person that has ever been hurt. This is for them. We are standing in solidarity. We love one another, and we're tired of this. We are tired of this.
Can I ask you, have you protested before? You know, is this the first time you've joined a protest for Black Lives Matter? Or, you know, where were you with that?
This is my first protest.
What was it about this one that made you say, you know what, I'm going out there?
I'm tired of it. I'm tired of it. My family, my brother's Mexican, my mom's Mexican, and they've dealt with this. And it's this one that everybody came, whether they are white, whether they are Mexican, Asian, it doesn't matter what race you are. We are here for a movement, and it is going to happen. 2020, by the end of this year, God will put peace on all of this entire, and he will make peace, and it will be done. It needs to be done.
There you go. Thank you so much. Words of peace here on the corner of Imperial and Brea Boulevard as a number of people, several hundred. It has grown through the day. It has also moved throughout the day. We were a couple blocks down at Birch and Brea Boulevard, where a lot of people who aren't from Brea, that's where they go for the restaurants. There's some fancy, cool restaurants. There's the movie theater there. But then they eventually marched down the street, down Brea Boulevard towards Imperial. We thought they might be heading towards the mall, but then they turned back to this specific intersection. And here they are as the lights turn green. They're moving forward. Can I interview you guys about why it's important for you to be here?
I couldn't hear you. Say it again.
Why are you here? What made you get out of your house and come to this?
I'm here to protest injustice against all people. Everyone should be treated equally, no matter their race, color, or anything. And that just needs to be, that message needs to be portrayed everywhere. Not just here, not just in LA, not just Minneapolis, everywhere. It needs to be the same everywhere.
There you go. Now, as far as the police presence, you know, we have seen them, but they're not right here where the protests are happening. They're yards away, just kind of making sure that everything's okay, so that they're not taking that direct approach so far. And what we've seen is nonviolent, peaceful. They're here, but they're very passionate. You know, we've heard so many people who are, you know, nearly in tears talking about why this is such a crucial thing for them to be doing right now. So we're going to be out here monitoring the situation as they continue, as this goes past the time that they thought that they would be out here. David, calling back to you.
Yeah, Tony, you did a wonderful job in interviewing those folks. Their passion is so obvious, and they're so articulate on their understanding and why they need to be there and speak out. So I love those interviews that you brought to us, and it was really helpful to see and hear. And that's going on in Brea. Live pictures it's a small group, but a vocal group, and it's a perfect example of what's going on in many communities around Southern California. People showing up to peacefully protest, and they have certainly something to say.
They've been there all day long. Also in Manhattan Beach, we've seen protests there, or demonstrations and walkers, but the most have been in Hollywood, where we have seen thousands of people, two different large groups marching since about 11 o'clock this morning, perhaps earlier. And so it's been wonderful to see that. We're going to check in with Veronica Miracle. She is at Sunset and Vine. Veronica?
Well, David and Ellen, that's right. There was a huge crowd here just a couple of minutes ago, and they started heading this direction down Sunset. But everywhere you turn, you see protesters all over Hollywood, whether they're marching through the street amongst the traffic, or they're hanging out over there where the National Guard has been stationed. We saw them last night at 11 o'clock at a very quiet street when the curfew was enforced. And you see all of them still there, and all of the protesters, some of them communicating with the National Guard. But for the most part here in Hollywood, a lot of civil disobedience. I want to pan, yeah, Ryan, can you show that car there stopped there, honking with the signs out, people on top of their cars? So definitely a show of their voice. They're here to definitely make a statement, but no sense that this could turn violent at all in any way. I don't get that sense at all. Just a lot of passionate people out here. Hey, can I talk to you while you're out here? No? Okay. Can I ask you guys why you're out here today?
Support everybody we can.
Yeah, support everybody.
It just makes me so sad. I can't sit back and do nothing.
What do you feel about the crowd out here and the tone and the mood?
I mean, it's strong and empowering, but it's also sad and depressing at the same time, just seeing like the military moving in on everybody. It's just so sad.
Where are you from?
I'm from Connecticut.
So what is it like to be here in Los Angeles amongst all of this?
I mean, I'm looking to move out here at some point, and like I love the energy like this place has. It seems so peaceful underneath all of this, but I mean, I hope it can be like the place it was, if not better.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for your time. So a lot of that, where just so many people who are passionate converging here, having their voices heard. We'll send it back to you guys.
I like that interview. Veronica, thank you so much. Now, Eyewitness News at 4 starts right now.
This is Eyewitness News with live breaking news.
Breaking news and Eyewitness News at 4 o'clock. Thousands of people flood the streets of Hollywood demanding justice for George Floyd and against police brutality everywhere.
Clergy lead a peaceful march and protest in downtown L.A. Mayor Eric Garcetti taking a knee on the street, telling protesters he too wants justice for George Floyd.
And LAPD Chief Michael Moore facing calls to resign after his comments yesterday about the death of George Floyd. Hello and welcome to everyone watching. We are live on ABC7, ABC7.com, and streaming wherever you are on the ABC7 Los Angeles app. I'm David Ono.
I'm Ellen Leyva. Thousands of people are once again taking part in protests across Southern California, demanding justice for George Floyd and against police brutality. Despite dozens of marches over the last week, LAPD is reporting 2,700 arrests, but 90% of those are for curfew violations. There have also been 60 police vehicles that have been damaged. Mandatory curfews will once again be in place in communities across our area. Some are already in effect and go into place now. Curfews for both LA County and LA City are from 6